All right, here we go. After episode 2, which was about scenarios, and then episode 3, which was whose scenario is it anyway, there were lots of questions of whether or not people could offer advice on scenarios. And we're finally getting around to that episode. So welcome to Fighting the World, Making and Breaking Scenarios. Episode 9 took a little while. I'm Wistric.
And I'm Bruce. And this is Fighting the World. All right, so if you've been here before, you know the drill. We're going to go through each of our panelists and have them introduce themselves, where they're from, and give us just a quick one-sentence overview of what Melee is like in their kingdom. All right, and let's just throw them in the hot seat. And since you have fire as your background, we're going to start with Dogberry.
Hello, I'm Oliver Dogberry. I'm from Kaid. The melee in our kingdom varies a lot. We have a lot more loose, fun melees than more structured, heavy, must-win war points. So it allows us to do things that are not necessarily just to win a war point.
All right, fabulous. I can't wait to hear your perspective on the scenarios that were given to us today. I'm going to jump to Gio next.
I'm Giovanni Orato from Artemisia. Melees,
Our first Artemisian.
Oh, cool. Melees, we're not necessarily known for the biggest of melee in our kingdom. However, we tend to do pretty well with ourselves when we go to wars. We're not a principal in any kingdom wars currently, but we still like to go up and mess things up when we go. So
fabulous. All right, I'm going to jump over to Keith.
Hi, I'm Battista, and my camera has a really weird delay, so it's freaking me out right now. But I'm from Kaid as well, and we do a lot of, I would say, like res battle type scenarios. We do a lot of that kind of stuff because we mostly do our melees and things like that at smaller events, smaller wars. We used to do Estrella, which was a really big war, and we don't do that anymore for the most part. So we have a lot more freedom in our scenarios because it's usually just us fighting us or us fighting the West, and that's pretty much about it. So we have a lot of freedom and a lot of fun with our scenarios.
Right, and that sounds awesome, and I can't wait to see what you have to add to some of these scenarios and where you find ways to break them. All right, last but not least, Warwick.
Yeah, I'm Warwick. I'm from Ontir. I would describe Melee and Ontir as a group of hyperactive cats with knives tied to their tails.
I like that scenario.
Do you want to go into any detail on that, or?
So we're a tourney kingdom. So there's lots of us. So you get a whole bunch of us on the field, and it's like a whole bunch of drunken Celts who want to go find someone to kill, and trying to herd those cats into any semblance of a flank or a center can be quite challenging. We're all cowboys.
that was not the time to take a drink.
I was about to ask you doing okay there, Gio. Good job, Warwick. Don't break the other panelists. Thank you.
I'm just getting started.
No.
You're here to break scenarios. Save it for the scenarios. All right, Wistric, do you want to take us into the first?
So again, thank you to everybody who submitted scenarios. We have 5 tonight. The first that we're going to discuss was a melee game submitted by Lucius Ursus. He is unfortunately not able to be here, so we're going to discuss it, figure out, any improvements, any questions that might be outstanding, and, hopefully be able to give him some useful advice. The second is a melee tournament format submitted by Sigurd Grunwald, who is with us tonight, so he will get to answer all of our questions. And third is going to be a rapier version of the Pinzik Allied Champions Battle. that was submitted by Illidor Bettigrain, and she is not here, so actually for the second time this week, I'm going to be stunt Illidor. Fourth is going to be
nearly tall enough.
I know, but I try. I'll try to loom. Fourth is a town battle scenario submitted by Mara Erikstarter, who's with us. And the fifth is the Battle of the Black Rose, which is a multi-battle sort of entire event scenario submitted by John Hidalgo, who's also with us. So let's kick it off with the game submitted by Lucius. And hey, I can share my screen.
All right. So Lucius gave me a little bit of the background on this when he sent it in. He's run it at a couple of small practices and had it in mind as a training scenario for the mid-realm, which, as we've discussed in many previous episodes, is one of the like titular war kingdoms. We practice everything for Penzik. A lot of our rule sets are based on Penzik, and a lot of our training regimes are so that we war good. What it is, and just you can see it up on the screen, but the basic rundown is that it is a chess timer in the middle of the field with 2 equal timers on either side, and the team that runs out of time first loses. There's a little bit more detail here. They tried this out and it was about 15 yards from either side to the hay bale. And you can adjust the distance for a larger group. They did find that the chess timer was breakable, but could be fixed with a little bit of plexiglass. And they did make the rule that you were not allowed to move the timer.
I wonder how that came about.
I don't. I know my people.
That was the first one I thought of. I saw it already in there in the description and thought, So the next question is, can we move the hay bale?
Oh man, poor Lucius. He's not ready for this.
So what starts and stops the timers? Am I missing that?
So what they found was the players start and stop the timers, and they may not use their swords. They did have it as a rule where you could use your sword to snipe it, but they stopped that because apparently the timer kept flying off the hay bale because our point control is not the best in some areas. Now,
Okay.
What are you talking
So
about?
the
It's great
logic
point
is
control.
you fight to get to the timer, and then when
Yes.
you get to the timer, you stop it, and then the next team is also trying to get to their timer as well.
Right, and the timers are side by side on the hay bale, so it's
No, it's a chess timer. Like it's all one timer.
Right.
You flip it back and forth.
right.
You guys have seen timers in chess?
Yeah,
Like I make my move
hit the
and I
little
turn my timer off, and now
So-
your timer is going. And if you run out of time playing chess, you lose if you haven't won the game at that point.
So
So
the way they had it done was you could hit the timer with a gloved hand, the same way you could flip a flag or whatever. You just had to go up and slap it, according to him when I asked for clarification. So some of the other concerns that I know he had was scaling this. How would you make this work for a larger group? And how could you train specific things with this?
I like that he wants to have DFB in there, Death from Behind, because that makes these types of games far more interesting and strategic. And so you're not necessarily going right into a line battle over the timer. My question would be like, I think it would just end up being sort of like a battle over the hay bale.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just everyone's going to be gathered around the hay bale. It's a scrum, right? They're going to scrum around the hay bale. Hay bales are going to get knocked over at some point, probably. People are going to be pushing into them.
Or falling into them like I would do.
So I think that's probably and I wish he was here to address, whether he actually did see that behavior, because I'm just presuming that that's what you'd see.
So
and is there a time? So like if we're fighting, I kill you, I hit the timer, is there a timeout time before somebody else can hit it again? Or can you just keep?
So the way a chess timer works is it's basically two clocks with two buttons on one device. And so when I hit a button, it starts that timer. And when I hit the other button, it stops that timer and starts the other timer. So you're trying to start the other team's timer and keep your timer from being started. So if you control it.
So basically just keep hitting their hands. Since they have to use a gloved hand to do it.
If you're that close.
Snipe hands the whole time.
Yeah, somebody in the chat actually came up with a thought I was thinking of is if you want to scale this up, you need multiple timers and multiple locations, just like you would a capture the flag.
Exactly.
If you have one capture the flag, it's going to give the same problem. If you have 5, then everybody's got to determine which way they're going to go. The problem with this is, unlike flags where you can see what's going on and it doesn't stop until the end of the scenario, if you run out of time, somebody's got to note that and let the marshals know that this particular timer is dead and that point is now set permanently, so that everybody will then fight over the remaining 4, remaining 3, remaining 2 timers as going
forward. And then get you back to, I guess, to the original problem. If you've got 30 or 40 people aside, you're going to have 60 people fighting over one timer at some point, if it's a resurrection battle.
So someone in the chat actually just mentioned that maybe you could use the claim timers as new res points, but that would affect the setup of the field itself. And right now we have a very simple setup. It is a hay bale in the center of the field with a timer on it. What could you do to modify the field setup to either incorporate these claim timers or create a different scenario, like in your visions and your thoughts?
I would link the resurrections to the number of timers, and as you started losing timers, you would start getting limited resurrections. So people would have to start leaving the field, and you would want to design that in such a way that when you only had one timer left, hopefully there were only like 15 or 20 people in the field at that point, with maybe no resurrections or minimal resurrections.
So you lose like 20% by the first timer goes away. And then...
Yeah, I think you got 3 timers, you got unlimited resurrections. As soon as one timer's gone, and now you're going into limited resurrections.
Or a potential if your team has got the has got the timer, then your team continues to have resurrections.
You're going to run away with it at that point.
Yeah, you're going to have a cascade effect.
Yeah,
I think, which is.
But it'd be fun to try.
That's how you would break it. That's how you break it if that's the rules.
Is the goal to get a definitive winner, or is the goal to have a crap ton of fighting? Yeah. Have everybody have fun.
You know what might make this scenario more interesting and more playable is if all of the timers weren't set for the same amount of time. If you have 5 timers and one timer is set for 2 minutes and the next timer is set for 4 minutes and the next timer is set for 6 minutes, and then maybe have 1 res or however many reses, scale to reses like you said, and that way teams have to decide and sides have to decide which timer is worth their time at that point. You know, like, oh, there's only 30 seconds left on this timer. Is it even worth sending a team over to try and claim it? Or should we concentrate on something else and still scale your reses?
So that's an excellent idea. And I think that would be really fabulous for this if it were something that was being run either at prime time at an event, not first thing in the morning or last thing in the evening. Or at the end of a war event, but at a point when you could describe this to your fighters in a way that they would comprehend and not need another cup of coffee or weren't already gassed. I think that's
another point.
That, like, magic hour when fighters aren't speaking.
When we've taken our Ritalin or Adderall.
That hour does not exist.
After lunch when their tummies are full.
So my question here is, what are some of the marshalate concerns that you guys see?
Well, one of the ones that was brought up was the scrum, as Warwick and I did talk about that.
Yeah, and if you allow death from behind, just ensuring that you go through how to perform safe death from behinds, because not all kingdoms have it as a default. Some kingdoms do, but many especially some of the larger wars, death from behind is not encouraged. And so in my kingdom, death from behind is a standard. It's not a TRP. It always happens. And before any melee scenario, we always go through how to perform death from behind, from the side, with different weapons, all those types of things. And I'd say that would be really important to demonstrate that.
I just like the fact that they're like, we recommend that you use a stake to secure it into the hay bale. And I just see that like going horribly, horribly wrong at some point.
Well, so the reason for the stake was
that.
because the reason for the stake was apparently the chess timer kept getting catapulted off of the hay bale when people were trying to poke it.
Lunging for it, right?
So it sounds like you really need to make sure you get a very stout chess timer or over-engineer one that works.
Yes.
So we actually have a question from the audience, and Brian, I'm so gonna come smack you because I love DFB. But he's apparently in a kingdom that doesn't have a DFB tradition, and there are people who love it. But what does DFB add specifically to this scenario?
Any scenario where you have unlimited reses, death from behind adds a significant amount to that scenario, because you always have to be watching out behind you, and you always have to be watching for your line, because people res, and then that's their opportunity to come up behind your line or to be not seen and sneak up on the side of you. So, I mean, anytime you have unlimited reses or any kind of open field, death from behind plays a huge part. And I'm a huge fan of death from behind, so.
In this scenario specifically, with it not having any obstacles other than people, what else could DFB be used for? What does it force players to do?
Well, you could get to the point where, let's say that they've only got 1 or 2 people trying to protect their timer. If for some reason I got behind them, I could take those 2 people out very quickly and change that clock.
You don't have the meat grinder of 2 lines. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's it, right?
Like, I don't have to zipper that line to take it over to be able to win the scenario, because I got behind. They don't know I'm there. I could potentially hit it and just, walk away. They wouldn't know that all of a sudden their timer is no longer theirs, it's mine.
So
I guess,
I'd like to address it as well, if I could.
go ahead.
So as soon as you add death from behind to a scenario, you instantly have war leaders that want to create specific units to do specific things. If you have no death from behind, if everybody has to be facing each other, you're assuming a line battle in any situation. People are just going to line up and fight. As soon as there's death from behind, you want people to punch through. You want people to go around. You want flanking units. You want strong centers. You want a bunch of cowboys as a reserve that you can throw in whenever you see the opportunity. You're going to take a couple of fast movers and send them out to distract, because they don't want those guys back there. They're going to have to send people out to deal with it. Now you're using the whole field.
Okay, so I want to kind of stem from this as well with having the DFB or not having the DFB. What would happen if you played with the field size? We're not given a specific size here, other than it was done at a smaller practice, which probably means a gym here in the Mid-Realm, or a small park. What would happen if you made the field larger? What would happen if you made this field smaller? And should DFB still be in play, depending on how you resize things?
As far as I'm concerned, if you only have the 1 point, the size of the field doesn't matter, because everybody's going to concentrate like a black hole around that 1 point, regardless of whether or not you have a football field or if you have a small gym.
I disagree. I think if you've got a small field and you have DFB, they will extend their lines to protect their flanks all the way to the edges of the field. If you,
See, go ahead.
Go ahead. Please go ahead. No, I want to hear it.
Because one of the things I'm thinking of doing is I'd send my people in, and I would circle the wagons around the hay bale and protect it from all sides like a porcupine. And this is where DFB comes inside, because if you can hack away part of my circle, then you can punch through to the other side of the hay bale. The other thing is, can you fight over the hay bale?
Well, let's talk about the DFB. What happens if you have a large field or a small field with or without DFB? Those are different situations. and those conditions will encourage different behavior. A large field with DFB, you're going to get the scenario that I was talking about. A small field without DFB, you're going to have a line battle. Or a small field with DFB, you're going to have a line battle. A small field without DFB, you could have potentially, I think, what you're describing, where people are just going to try to mob the hay bales and basically circle the wagons around it.
All right, so we've thought about this as like a player of the game and what tactics we'd use and how to change things to train specific tactics. So my next question is, if you were marshaling this, if you were a marshal in charge, what rules would you seek to clarify? And what are some of the like dispute resolution things you'd want to think about with this particular scenario?
So one thing is, if you scale up and you have multiple timers, I would highly suggest having a marshal per timer. Just that way, it's, yes, we're all very honorable, but that way you have a definitive judge as to who hit the timer, and being able to watch and kind of referee that specific timer itself.
Okay.
Do the timers actually make a noise or something when the time runs out? How do you know?
And do they make a different noise depending on what side it is?
No, I don't believe so. He sent over a link to the timer, and it seemed like just a very basic chess clock and timer. So no sounds, no noise. My other question is, if you were a marshal, how would you handle this if someone hit the wrong side on the chess timer? What happens if you accidentally run down your own team?
Better hit it again.
Sucks to be you. It sucks to suck.
Be more accurate. You're a rapier fighter.
We have to work on our point control or something.
How sensitive are they? Are they really sensitive?
They tend to be very touch, like you don't
We're
have.
We're talking about the rapier fighters, right?
Yeah.
I know rapier fighters are sensitive. You don't have to answer that.
All right. So also, we had
actually. So the question of sensitivity and durability came up, and Mara pointed out in the chat that there was a year or two where they used chess timers in the ravine, but only for a year or two. And at Gulf Wars, the ravine at Gulf Wars, and I trying to remember if it was because they broke, they weren't up to the task, or if it was just whoever had them didn't bring them the next year. Mara, do you remember?
I wasn't involved much other than like Midroom Specific Command those few years. All I remember is that they were in boxes and like mounted to something. It was like this big, like not a big, but it was a fairly SCA engineered contraption. And I just remember them being there a year or two when I went. It doesn't mean those were the only 2 years they were there. It's just I remember them being a thing and then suddenly not being a thing. I'm not sure what the decision was either way or what caused them to not happen anymore, but I remember them existing, and that's about all I got.
In the 8 Gulf Wars I've been to over the past decade, they've shown up maybe 2 years, and it was 2 years in a row. So it might have been a durability thing. I was trying to get in touch with anybody who might have known, and just wasn't successful earlier. So
no worries. I just remember them existing. That's all.
All right. So to go over kind of what we chatted about, we've talked a little bit about how this could be tweaked on the field. Oh, wait, we got another thing in chat. It occurs to me that since one side or the other is always running, everyone will know when it hits 0. If it's set to 15 minutes, it's over at 15 regardless. That is actually an excellent point, Gomez. And I think that helps a lot with the marshalling concerns here. You also don't have I don't know if other kingdoms run into this, where there's a lot of arguments over who's marshalling the flag, if they're completely unbiased about who had the flag for how long. But that's a thing we experience here in the Mid-Realm.
Wow.
We like to win. We like our sports. It's fun.
Pinsnick.
Sometimes.
I didn't think referees could be bought.
No, we're all completely honorable. Honor before victory, right? That's the line. But
Should be.
no, I think that's a great point, Gomez. And I think, Oliver, that's also a great point, is that chess timers can be set. So this is kind of a great tool if it doesn't fall apart or get catapulted into the audience by a rogue point. But to go over what we went over, we talked about modifying the field to train different things. We talked about modifying the field to create new res points potentially to scale this up. We also talked about a couple of rules to clarify, like can we fight over a hay bale or are they infinite high like at Penzik? And what happens if someone hits the wrong button? The other discussion we kind of had was how can you help the chess timer not go horribly, horribly wrong utilizing either a stake, which might not be a good idea, a bungee cord, a box, or kingdom colors on either buttons. And maybe we show Lucius this clip and send him our notes, and maybe he'll be able to tweak it and make it better for a slightly larger group. The next scenario we were going to discuss.
I did want to point out one thing, that especially if this is not a war point, but you're just running it for funsies, building in, the timers build in, as he points out, the ability to handicap for the next round. So if you have a team that's dominant, but for whatever reason can't go back and balance it out, you can still build in that handicap so that it's moderately approaching fun. Like just we're out here to fight and have a good time. I like that he has that observation in here.
Yeah.
Wait, we can fight for fun in the mid-roll?
No,
Fun and
you
safety.
can't.
Fun and safety.
You can't. East Kingdom can't either.
Oh.
Wow, yeah, you guys are just calling it like it is, aren't you?
Yeah, sorry. I'm EXO of the Mid-Rome Army. I have to laugh about it or I start crying into my binders. So,
All right.
all right, the next one we were going to discuss was the, sorry, Gio, I didn't mean to break you.
I wasn't drinking, we're good.
We were going to discuss
Sigurd, come on down.
You'll have to pardon my lack of video. I don't have a webcam on this machine.
Luddite. All right.
Walk us through it.
Do you want to introduce yourself really quick? Just
Well, I'm Sigurd Grunwald. I am Marshal for the Shire of Nantuderwidden in the Kingdom of Meridies. I've been fighting long enough that my rapier career can legally drink. So basically, just to give you a background on what prompted this, shortly after I moved up here to Nanty, they decided to resurrect the Giants Dance tournament or event. Rapier did not exist then, so basically I had free hand to create something. The event itself is geared around team competition, so you had a team melee, you had an ANS entrant, and a heraldic entrant, and a couple others. But not knowing how many people we would get, I had to approach something that would allow the maximum amount of fighting and hopefully the maximum amount of fun. So the way I went about it was actually inspired by a training scenario that Wistric hosted at, I believe it was a Fox's, but I'm not entirely certain on that. So since it was Giants Dance, what I decided was you're defending your town from the attack of a giant. We can't really simulate that physically with people, so we simulated it with weapons by giving the giant whatever weapons they wanted to take out and limiting the length of the weapons that the defenders could use, as well as no death from behind and no RBGs, because it's no fun if the second person that faces the giant shoots him dead. So essentially, it starts with one defender, one attacker. 30 seconds later, your second defender comes in. 30 seconds later, your third defender, and it keeps going. If your giant manages to cycle through all defenders, meaning they've all died at least once, they reset and start coming in at 25-second intervals, and we do that until the giant dies. Because who wants the giant to win? But essentially, we score it based on how many people the giant kills and how long they live. We've had this tournament twice now. This year would have been the third year, but obviously because of COVID, we didn't do it. And actually, we have the winner of the first one on this call. That would be Shimon.
Hey.
The winner of the second one would be Baron Tiberius of Hawkwood.
So this one sounded like a lot of fun. I know I had a couple of questions when I read through, but I'm going to let our panelists tackle this first.
Please.
I'm just going to go with yoink.
I know I'm doing something right if people want to yoink my idea. After all, I yoinked it from Wistric.
So basically, a defender has 30 seconds to kill the giant, and if they cannot kill the giant in 30 seconds, they're off the field.
No.
No,
A second
the
defender
giant
comes
has
in
30
to help
seconds
them.
to kill the defender before a second one joins them.
So it's a Hydra head, basically.
Ah,
So it's me versus you, Gio. I'm the giant, you're the defender. If I can't kill you in 30 seconds, if we're still fighting after 30 seconds, Oliver joins you. And now I'm fighting two people. Do I got it right?
Yes.
Yeah.
okay. I understand now the verbiage. When it says cycle out, to me, that means to leave the field.
My apologies.
Onto the field.
And so then if the first person kills the giant, then it's over?
Exactly. And then
And
the next
there are
person
4
becomes a
people.
giant.
Okay. That's actually better in my
So
mind.
it's just King of the Hill, basically.
Yeah. And you can come out with case 45-inch rapiers if you want, if that's your jam, right? And
If
they're
you're the
fighting
giant.
with daggers.
Okay, so it's
Mhm.
just an exciting name for King of the Hill.
Yeah.
Okay.
And part of the reason I limited it to 28 instead of just telling people to bring daggers is because we might have somebody whose main authorization was rapier only. So I wanted to give them a chance to participate, and I happen to own a 28-inch rapier.
Wait a minute, you guys make people authorize and never. No.
It's an old tradition that my brain still latches onto and doesn't acknowledge has changed.
So do you have that many short blades, less than 28 inches and less, that you can utilize in here?
Yeah,
No,
our
not
standard
really.
our standard short blade is 35 inches or daggers.
I got a 30, but yeah.
It
Well,
just has to pass flex.
The triplet TO5 or the Zen Warrior, whatever you call it now, I think is a 22-inch blade. That's probably what you're going to see most of out there, would be my guess.
It just,
So daggers.
with the arms race that we've seen with the length of the blades, I don't see a lot of short blades out on the field from our neck of the woods. Not that it's a bad idea, just to make sure that everybody has one of blades, it would be interesting.
It's a shame. It's a shame because Pascal likes to talk about fighting with 230s, and he wouldn't be able to bring them out.
Yeah, if he was here, he'd be preaching the gospel of.
Yeah, because
Yes, he
considering
was.
I think mine's a 32 and I have probably the shortest blade in the freaking kingdom. And every time I bring it out, you guys all laugh at me like, really? That's what you're going to use?
I mean,
So-
you could bring out double daggers if you wanted to. The only thing with double daggers, whenever you run into this type of situation where you got a shorter blade compared to longer blades, as far as a martial standpoint, is people are going to run and just start gacking people. And so it's part of that point control and calibration thing. But that's my biggest martial concern is eventually you're going to get 2 or 3 people just.
Well,
Going
Sigurd's
up
run it.
against
Sigurd's run it
Jackie.
twice.
Yeah,
Was that a
Sigurd,
problem?
how aggro do you see people get?
Oh, honestly, I have not seen anything that caused me concern on the aggro side.
So
I was
clearly, I need to
wondering-
make it to this event.
Yeah, I was wondering how you came up with the 30-second timer.
Basically, that was stolen from Wistric.
It's a 10-second timer for me.
What's
And
that?
you feel that
It's a
gives enough
10-second
time?
timer for me.
Oh, okay. I
This
guess
30
I'm
seconds
actually
is
kinder than Wistric.
And you feel that gives people enough time to get involved in the scenario without feeling like they have to, like they said, jump on somebody right away?
The only person that I've seen that they have to jump in immediately is the giant, because we start them probably a good 10 yards apart.
So we have a question from the chat, which is basically, is this run as a melee or a tournament? Like, is it both? Is it one? Is it the other? And what actually happens if the defender runs away until backups arrive? Like, is there any Is there any rule against waiting around to get 2 more buddies or 3 more buddies?
You have to have a giant willing to let you do that, because the times we've run it, we don't do a very wide field.
Right. That one of the questions was how big is the field?
Yeah, we're talking about maybe 10 yards between where the giant enters and where the defenders come in from, but you're only about 10, 15 feet wide.
Oh, so that's
So
a pretty
small-
small field.
Small
Yeah.
tourney field.
It's a
Yeah,
south.
because if you're ever by yourself against multiple numbers, you need to be able to move.
Well, that's your bad because you didn't kill the first one quick enough.
Yeah.
You're a giant. Get the job done.
I'm just gonna step on you all.
I think my favorite rule in this is if you run the line, they start over again, but with that they're coming faster. So you're
yeah.
guaranteed that nobody's actually gonna be able to run the line to exhaustion.
Yeah, it's a snowball
But
effect
if they're
eventually.
that good, they're gonna run up the numbers, and so that I think that's a great rule.
So there's one more question, well, 2 more questions, but it's really kind of one more question from the chat. If this is technically kind of a melee, are spears okay? Which we've been learning a lot about the spears lately. Or is this considered a tournament and are those non-standard?
I have not had to look at spears as a option yet because it was still in the experimental phase, the last one we held. Myself, I'm not against it. The issue with that is I don't think I'm on the martial list for spears, so I would need to rectify that before I would be able to allow spears into the tourney.
You'd have a lot more people running up and gagging the giant with spears.
Well,
Giants
the giant
gotta
would be able to
run
have a spear. They wouldn't.
Giants just gotta have a shield. We've
Daggers.
already figured this part out. You got a shield and a sword, and he's got a spear, and
Well,
Just
that's what I'm
have to
saying.
pass the
People
ball.
running up, parry the spear.
it's actually really safe. Been doing it for weeks.
So
Hey, Theo, it goes back to you only having a 28-inch long spear then.
I guess that's true. You could bring a 28-inch spear.
Yeah, Gio has discovered that you can have
Okay,
a
spear.
sword exactly as long as you want it to be.
I've got a spear. It's only a half inch, but it meets all requirements. You can thank my provost for that. He's in this panel right now.
no. So one of our panelists actually has a question. Battista?
Yeah, so I was wondering how well the scenario plays for the newer fighters, because it seems like if you're newer, you'd have a hard time as the giant, because, I mean, you're not used to fighting A, fast, B, multiple people, C, all the things I just mentioned.
Mm.
So, I mean, it seems like it would really kind of skew towards the more experienced fighters.
And
I could-
sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
It's just one of those, you got to gain the experience somehow.
Yeah, unfortunately, there wasn't really any way I could mitigate that except for saying, yeah, you're a new fighter. Yeah, you're the giant. You got to face a mod, but at least they're only coming at you with daggers.
So I have a question. You said that the ultimate winner is the fighter with the most kills.
Mhm.
Is that either defending or is that as the giant, or is that on either side? And who's keeping like count of those?
That is the giant. You have to have the most kills as the giant to win.
Okay.
And basically, I use a stopwatch with a lap counter on it, and I basically click the lap counter every time somebody dies, so I know how many people they killed when it's over.
Is that you as the marshal?
Okay.
Yeah, it's not one I take part in,
What percentage
unfortunately.
of the time do you see the person, like the defender, the first defender who's out there all on their own, actually last 30 seconds?
I've seen it happen infrequently, but I have seen it happen with 2 or 3 of the exchanges. And I think one of them was somebody who didn't quite understand the goal, and they ended up letting 3 people get out to them as the giant. So they didn't go very far.
Do
Death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
So I know it says that everyone cycles through and everyone takes a turn as the giant. Is that only once? Do they have one chance as the giant, or does this just keep going until you guys are done?
We've usually had about 8 to 10 fighters. So usually by the time everybody's had a time through, people are saying we're good. I'm not opposed to cycling through multiple times, but they're usually going at it pretty heavy for the time they're out there.
Okay.
So this isn't as much a melee thing then as just a tournament variation in a way.
It's one that can lead to melee, yes.
No, the second you have 2 or more people fighting each
Yeah.
other.
Well, yeah, I
becomes a
guess
melee.
it's technically a melee, but still, I mean,
Yeah.
just you have
It's a
5 or 6
tourney with
people at a
multiple
time.
people on the field.
Yeah.
It's an odd hybrid tourney. I basically put it forward in part because I thought it might be worthy of discussion, and if anyone had any ideas that would improve upon it, I would totally yoink them.
I'm just planning on yoinking this scenario in general.
This looks really fun. I know that some of the rules, like the written rules, need just a little bit of clarification. And we've touched on some issues like this isn't a noob-friendly tournament.
How many
So-
attorneys are noob friendly though?
No, I know. I'm not saying that that's a strike against it, but we have a panel here of a bunch of people who like to pull apart rapier scenarios. So if you don't mind, Sigurd, can I ask
Yeah.
the panelists, how would you tweak this to make it more noob friendly?
And I mean, it's not just a matter of like pulling apart the scenario or trying to make, it's a fair point that most things are not noob friendly, but at the same time, if you're going to do something at a war or an event, you want to make things appealing to all levels of fighters. Otherwise, people aren't going to want to participate. So
Do the defenders, not the giants, are the defenders allowed to bring shields out?
Oh yeah, they can bring whatever secondary they want, so long as if it's a blade, it's no longer
So
than 28 inches.
I would make it noob friendly by saying there's no shields on the field unless you're a giant or a noob.
Yeah, single point for the attackers.
Or they could have 2 daggers, but But
Yeah.
if the noobs have shields, they can defend themselves more.
Or potentially, if you really want to scale it down, there's a 1-on-1, not necessarily 2-on-1, but that kind of defeats the purpose of the scenario.
Well, and how do you define a noob? Is that somebody who's been authorized for less than a year?
yeah, I think we all know who our noobs are.
Well,
I
I mean,
will say
fine,
also, just from the perspective of giving the newer fighters another outlet, we have also held a newcomers tournament secondary to this.
Okay. No, and that makes perfect sense. It was something that was touched on, so I wanted to give our panelists a second to talk about it a little bit and see if they had any ideas for making it more fun. I know as a newer fighter, I would have. Oh, Oliver.
Okay, so we're talking about the noobs in terms of being the giant, because a noob as the defender, he's just another defender on the field, and it doesn't matter how new he is. So as a giant, you want to key it towards the giant side. So you can give a noob an extra life as the giant, so that they have 2 chances of running through before they wind out.
Or
Yeah,
you can increase the clock.
Or change what can be brought against the noob by removing the shields and secondaries against them.
And that was more my point. My point was more as the new person as the giant, not necessarily, as the other people, because the other people, you got 4 of you. If you're all new, it still doesn't matter. But as the giant, how do you make it a little more fair?
That's a really good point too, because you get your chance as the giant. You get gacked with a dagger your first time out, you feel kind of crappy. So I think it's a really good thing to think about.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely worthy of consideration.
We were all newbies once.
Right?
Think back to how you felt.
I think I might be a masochist because I think this would have been really, really up my alley. It still is. I want to go play this like right now. But okay, so just touching upon a little bit of what we spoke about, which is some of the written rules need a little bit of clarification, just if you were to ever publish this in an event book, because we had a couple of questions about like how many defenders go out, where are wins counted, where are losses counted, and no blades longer than 28. I know wouldn't fly in a lot of kingdoms, but I think most of our panelists are gonna yoinks this scenario, so this is excellent.
I have a question though. Where did sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying in pictures. We always need pictures. Jaw giant and some
My
little
question,
people.
where did you get the number 28 inches from? I don't know if this was asked earlier. It's just a really odd number.
Basically, I measured my shortest blade.
Oh, what is it? What is it, like a gladius or something?
Basically, it is a Schlager blade that I purchased back in the days before Zen Armory was a thing. And it got steak knifed by someone from a local group when we were fighting. So I basically cut it off, flex tested it, and it passed. So it's my
So it's an
favorite
ultra
secondary.
blade. Oh, that's another thing to consider in kingdoms because some kingdoms don't allow ultra blades like that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's. What did you cut off? Blade?
Was it? Was
It
it?
was a diamond Schlager,
34.
Did you
Can't use
did
it.
you cut the blade down?
Just the tip.
just the tip. I shortened it.
Now see,
I'm pretty sure
that's
society rules frowns upon that.
No,
nowadays.
they no longer do. As long as
No?
you don't
No.
alter
Okay.
the temper of the blade, you're
Yeah.
fine. You can now do this.
Okay.
This is how I got my my Angus trim I-beam in, because I gave it to Sam and he was actually able to plane it down enough that it had enough flex to pass the cut and thrust. Flex test.
Okay.
And I did flex test it before I ever put a tip on it.
I just measured my Schlager. It's 34 inches, so I don't know how the hell you get. Who has a 28-inch Schlager?
I mean, it could simply be the standard, something along a 30 or 32-inch blade.
Exactly.
All
That
right.
was just why I arrived at that length.
I would just give them daggers.
Okay,
Daggers.
now that everyone has measured their blades on screen, I would like to say thank you very much for sending this in, Sigurd. This looks like so much fun. A couple of the written rules need some tweaks, but other than that, this sounds like an excellent short form scenario to run. And I apologize, Trap is behind me making a drink, so if you hear ice cubes clinking, it's me. And
I put my comments in the chat privately, just so you know.
Okay.
And I didn't measure my sword on camera. I keep mine in the closet.
I do too. I think we're just
How
cut
long
the
that
same
been?
cloth, Key. All right.
Out the closet sometime.
Told you we're gonna beat the units episode on this one.
We might. This is a family show, but I wanted to say thank you again, Sigurd. I think everyone is going to be running this as soon as we can gather again. And I can't wait to see the tweaks to the written rules. And I would hope that you would drop them on the handy dandy thread in Fighting the World once you make them, because we all want to play this. Which one was next? Wistric, was it the Allied battle?
It was the
Tend to be
Allied
Theodore.
battle. So let me go pull that one.
That's from Illidor, never mind.
It's from Illidor. Yeah. So I'm stunned Illidor.
Illidor?
What were you thinking, Illidor?
Why would you want to?
Why should
Let's
we
not
ever
cause,
pull
like-
anything from the hard suits? They don't know what they're doing.
We don't need to get that.
No.
Oh, sorry.
That's
I like that you're putting them up on the screen though, because it saves me the trouble of having to read this tiny little printout that I made earlier.
It's a window of
Well, I figure,
opportunity.
like everybody else, anybody who watches the video afterwards would like to know what I'm talking about.
Hey, we're upping our production value here.
We
This
are.
episode had so much homework. Like when you said, "Hey, do you want to do this one?" I was like, "Yeah, that'd be fun." I watched the others, and then it was like, "Oh, here's all your homework." Like, what?
It was the 100 messages in the
Yeah, right.
It's like, good God, people.
That's
Back
a
at
thing.
3 a.m. Who's messaging?
Yes,
That's
if
nothing
anybody was
compared to
ever
my
a
house.
panelist on, or ever, maybe gets tapped to be a panelist for Fighting the World, just know that chat will go insane.
That's
Hey,
nothing compared to my household
The
chat.
couple of times it hasn't gone insane has been kind of the quiet, low-key episode. So I'm so happy when I walk away and come back to a raging dumpster fire on my Facebook feed.
All I can say is I'm so glad we didn't actually have to wear onesies.
I still don't own one.
Well,
Y'all would have regretted that a lot.
2 episodes from now. 2 episodes.
Oh, right. It's 2 episodes away.
It is 2 episodes away.
Right, because I'm going to be talking next time.
Yeah.
Okay,
All
this is
right.
Next time is the Bruce and Wistric show. More so than usual. Anyway, we'll plug that at the end of this episode. So, Ilidor reached out. One of the scenarios she wants us to consider is how to run a rapier version of the Allied Champions battle that happens at Pinzik. And this is different from the Heroic Champions battle, which is different. We've got the heavy rules up here. 75 versus 75, playing capture the flag, Team Fortress Classic style, not the, take the flag, hold the flag where it is, but grab the flag at the other end of the field and run it back. So yeah, the heavies go 75 versus 75, allies only. No Kingsmen is still in the rules, and if we want to talk a little bit about heavy.
Hey, this is an
culture.
anthropology show. So what does no king's men mean, Wistric?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. at
Nobody
all.
knows. That, like, I asked Ilidor, her guess was like, no royals and none of the champions, maybe, but
It does say allies only.
yeah, like that would already be. So yeah, we have.
So it's just the allies, not the principal kingdoms.
Right. That's why it's the Allied Champions battle.
And
Okay.
and they can run. You guys can run at Pinzik, right? Is that what you were saying?
Sometimes. It depends on what's negotiated in the rules. So,
So weird.
So one of the
background.
things that everybody, like one of the things we discovered in planning in the discussions leading up to this episode is
Thank you, Mara.
the, sometimes we can run at Pinzik, sometimes we can't. In Kaid, there's no running.
There's no running in Kaid.
You can walk.
There's no
briskly.
crying in baseball either.
Walk with a purpose.
Whereas in Ontir, we run all over the place. You just can't run into somebody.
Yeah, no, you can't run at all in Kaid. As a matter of fact, you can actually get penalized out of the scenario if you're caught running. The marshals can take you out of the scenario. And
Our
they
problem-
are really pissy about running sometimes too. Like even like a quick trot that some might not consider running.
It's
marshals
frowned upon.
may.
Even
In
outside of
Indonesia?
engagement.
And that's our problem is we get people that don't stop running when they get within engagement range. They figure they can just run through it. And when swords come up, people get hurt. Or swords get bent. Or both.
Y'all clearly
And
haven't
so-
fought in the ravine battle at Gulf Wars with people doing a full-on shield rush to the line.
Yeah, I mean,
So I was gonna mention the rule in the Gulf Wars books that I caused.
you know, Kaid is still pretty I don't want to say new, but I mean, as far as the rapier goes, and especially the rapier melees and things, Kaid is still fairly new to all of this. I mean, it's been about 20 years that they've been finally starting to get into the melee and getting the numbers where we can have big melees and stuff like that in the rapier. So a lot of that is still just it's not learned behavior yet that makes it safe enough for us to do certain things in scenarios, I guess you would say. I mean, we've been working on it and it's definitely improved over the years, but you got to remember we're still kind of new at this whole rapier thing, so.
So some of the background with the negotiation. Also, I'd like to point out that Mara pointed out what all king's men, allies only, not principals meant, which is you can't be like in fealty to a primary kingdom. So no champions, no populace, no etc. So with the running and the negotiation with Pinzik even, we negotiate what it means to run before it goes into the rule set for Pinzik itself. There's a whole discussion about it almost every year. So it's not just Kaid figuring that out still, even the Mid and the East are figuring that out and what it means for all of these big scenarios.
Could we not maybe just stop treating our fighters like children, running the scissors around a pool? Could we just do that?
Thank you.
No, we
problem
can't do
is
that.
that-
All right, carry on.
We have too many injuries. for
Butler
us.
County
So,
Hospital would call us up personally and be like, no, no more.
I guess it's probably a matter of scale is what we're talking about here. When you've got so many people in the field, especially there's basically spring breakers, you can't let them do that shit because they just don't do it enough.
Hey,
Right.
wait a second. Who here is a Kingdom Rapier Marshal who has access to the society injury deeds?
I am.
So Warwick, do the society injury information that's available indicate that running is a huge issue?
I'll have to go take a look.
Okay. Maybe we'll make that an episode.
Okay, let's do that. That should be fun.
I mean, you don't have those stats at your fingertips. Like, you don't have that stuff memorized.
Oh, fuck no.
I'm sure I have a folder somewhere.
Yeah, I've got if I had that, it would be in my Google Drive. I would.
You're like running injuries, fork to the eye. You have like all these little different things checked.
So to answer your question, Oliver, yes, primary kingdom at Pennsic. So usually it would be either East and Mid versus Athelmark, or it would be East and Mid.
Okay.
Personally, I'm not a fan of excluding anybody depending on what kingdom there are. Because if I'm from Artemisia, I'm not driving 24 hours plus to come be told I can't fight in something.
Do you have any idea how many things are happening at this event though?
This is
Still though.
It's
You have
So
to choose.
Gio, what this is it allows you
happens.
to fight.
There's also the heroic champions, which is one-on-one champions fights, heavy and rapier, and then some heroic champions melee, which is heavy and rapier, and then there's this, and this only happens for heavy, but not for rapier, and then there's the rest of the week, which is field battles, town battles, woods battles, broken field battles.
I would go through, when I go to an event this size, Gio, you have to go through the calendar and circle the things that you're going to go to so you don't miss them, because there's 10 other really cool things happening at the same time.
And for your background, Gio, this is one of the pageantry fights. You couldn't just show up and enter this anyway. You have to be invited type thing.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either, but that's
So-
different.
That's not true for the heavies.
What?
So theoretically, you have to be invited, but I have been walking across the field and had my friends from back when I lived in Atlantia walk off and be like, "Oh, we could have used your spear out there," and you're like, yeah, "That's cool. Nobody invited me." I'm like, you don't have to be invited.
All I'm saying is that even if I go 5 hours and still part of that kingdom, I don't like the idea of excluding people.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, the thing is that
let's look at the scenario and how would it work for Pennsic, which gets Bruce. This is a question for you. How many rapier fighters do we get on the melee field at Pennsic?
In the main battles, anywhere between 500, which is about 250 a side, on the heaviest day, to about 110 on each side on the lighter days.
the 2 to 500.
Mm-hmm.
So what portion of that is usually allies?
Okay, well, I can pull this up. So I'd also like to draw focus to the fact that this is written for for the heavy fighters. So think about how you can adapt a heavy scenario to be better for rapier, considering that we, for the longest time, did not have spears and cannot do shield rushes. So our numbers for, someone reorganized the folders. What is this? So our numbers for allies are, numbers breaks. Oh God. I'm gonna have to actually add these together because I have them broken down by kingdom. Heaviest.
You don't have them in a spreadsheet and you can just sum it? Come
No,
on.
I do have a spreadsheet, but I have it by battle, by kingdom.
Technically, I suppose it doesn't really matter though, because can't you scale this to any? I mean, can we just change that number to 25 and 25? And 40 and 40 and let her off the hook?
No, I have it pulled up. I'm just doing the math right now. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50.
It's much
100.
more fun because Bruce prides herself on her binders full of like all the information, and to be able to
about her
ask her a
math
question
skills?
where she has to say, ah.
So the allies are usually about 175 to 200.
Okay. So yeah, like assuming those numbers, where would we cap this for Pinzik? And there's discussion in the chat about how this is scalable down to, again, as I say, I've run it with like 15 people on the side. Good old days of Crusades. About how many people from that size pool of allies could we expect for to show up for this battle? How would that affect any of the other rules that we have in place?
I just have to comment on Oliver's comment. I just love the way you use the word foreigners. It's like, we're going to allow them foreigners to play in our tourney?
Seems that way sometimes, depends.
Is that way all the time at Pinzik?
I love reading it now. I think this is to allow foreigners the chance to enter our tourney. That's exactly what you said there.
So I actually have the breakdown of the champs teams and the numbers we usually have for allies melee fights for rapier as well. And it is usually 20 on 20. Sometimes it's up to 30 on 30, depending on the year. So there are the numbers you wanted.
You lost Gio? Oh, Gio just, he's still there.
So narrate your scenario now.
Okay. Wistric, do you want to go over it or do you want me to?
I am Stunt Illidor. So we have a field it's a subsection of the field at Pinzik because heavy fighters don't run 400 yards. And we have 75 fighters on a side. As noted, there are 5 substitutes available. So each side is technically 80 people, but only 75 on the field at a time. If you tap out and a sub comes in, you're out. That's it for the battle.
What does that mean, tap out?
If you're on the sidelines as a substitute work, and I say I'm gassed, and you go in, I don't get to go back into the battle at any point.
I understand.
I can't sub back in. I'm done. That's my day. Flags at either end of the field, and if we consider a rectangle, there's a resurrection point at one end, resurrection point at the other. Red team resurrecting at this end is trying to capture the flag that's at this end and run it back to a capture point back on their starting side. Not at their res point, because that's a problem. But at that end of the field, there will be a cap point. So they grab the flag, they run it back the length of the field to score.
Don't you mean fast walk?
No, heavy fighters run.
We're describing the heavy.
Well, right now this is what the heavy fighters do. Gotcha. Rapier fighters, fast walk. If there's running outside of engagement, they'll manage to be outside of engagement the entire time. So, and then it's whoever has the most points, whoever's captured the most times at the end of the hour.
So it says flag bearers must have gauntlets. So does that mean that the people who have the flags can't fight?
No, but in the case for the heavy field, that means like as a spearman, I can have my gauntlets on, so I can carry I'll have my gauntlets on anyway. I can carry the flag.
You can't have unprotected fingers on the heavy field unless you're a combat urchin.
Right. So like
they don't have a shield.
Who's only wearing demigaunts, they're not going to be able to carry that flag.
I think.
I
I
for
wonder if
rapier,
combat archers could grab it. No, they say to carry the flag, you have to have gauntlets. Yeah.
Yeah, combat archers I know use demigaunts.
Yeah, of course.
So like then let's take that convention. What's a rapier equivalent of that convention?
Well, there's no need to have it. You
No
don't need it.
secondary.
No secondary. Yeah, typically you have to have an open hand to be able to carry the flag. That's typically what we do in rapier.
Yeah, and we've run scenarios similar to that as well. And we usually what we do, I think, is say that whoever is carrying the flag or the football or the cup or whatever can't engage in fighting as long as they are carrying that item. If once they pass off that item or lose that item, then they can go back to fighting as a normal person.
What do you think the reason for that rule is?
I think it's a safety issue, honestly.
I can fight with a baton in my left hand.
Yeah, but I think that you don't have as much control if you're concentrating on what's over here and trying to fight at the same time, perhaps. I honestly don't know. I don't make the rules, I just follow them.
I think I
break
guess
the rule.
it's a good rule because it's a defensive secondary that not everybody may be authorized in, because some kingdoms don't have separate authorizations for batons and shields and stuff. So I can see that actually being a good rule in that case.
Or a glass of water.
The other issue too is if someone can't actually maneuver the flag with something in their hand, weapons being thrown on the field is a big consideration there, which is why they specify the free hand.
Yeah, I think in some scenarios that we've done too, like it's been specified that that chest weighs 50 pounds. You couldn't technically just carry it with one hand. You'd actually need two hands to carry it. And therefore, if you're carrying that chest, you can't also fight because you couldn't carry a 50-pound chest and fight. So I think it depends on the object that you're carrying as well and what it's considered.
It also gets battle tactics in, because you just can't go out there on your own and grab the object. You need to go with a team that knows how to support you and protect you as you're maneuvering across the field.
Yeah, it does encourage more of a unit. I know you guys are just waiting to say the word unit. So yes, it does encourage you to fight with a unit in that aspect.
So we have a question from the chat. Has this flag been declared fragile, or is it allowed to be used as a parry?
I have to go back to Wistric because I don't know the size of the flag. If it's something that's unwieldy or is not safe to use on the field as a secondary.
What do y'all think?
Well,
If you've got a
my
flag
earlier
that's
comment about
foot dowel
batons,
rod.
my earlier comment about batons still stands. I mean, you could use it as a baton, but not everybody is authorized in baton, so you just have to say no.
I think it really comes down to the marshalate and who designed the scenario and who's prepping for the scenario. That's just a factor that you would have to put in while designing the scenario and explaining it.
I love the idea of like if you're authorized in defensive secondary, then you can parry with the flag. Otherwise, no, because there are a number of kingdoms that are like, yeah, whatever, you're authorized, and then there's the mid.
I mean, I guess it's the equivalent of a cloak, right? If it's a flag, so it's like,
Well,
are you
like
authorized in cloak?
Something like that. And it's not just the flag; it's like you're parrying with the flag pole.
Oh, it's on a pole. Oh, I missed that part. I'm sorry. I thought it was just a flag, like in flag football, that you were just taking a flag.
That's my assumption at this point. I'm not sure.
Well, you know what happens when you assume.
Yes, I'm okay being an ass, as demonstrated by the last 8 episodes of this series.
So
The
what
problem is if you've got a 6 foot or 8 foot long pole with the flag on top of it, it's becoming unsafe on the field if you start spinning that around.
What are you talking about?
so
Just put it on a
what's
spearhead. It's a big spear.
Maybe
How
that's
did
something that needs to be
the flags
clarified.
get reset?
So my next question is, what size is this field? Do we have an answer?
Based on the number of people you're fighting on it.
Okay. What size would be a good size for this field, if let's say we had 50v50, like we discussed from the previous champs
I don't
battles.
know, 100 feet, 150 feet, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. At least 100 on a side, because you wanted the ability for these people to be able to maneuver around.
But it's also a res battle for an hour or so, whatever it is.
So my next question too is, because we don't have some of the heavy considerations, so we don't have spears necessarily in play for something like this, because we don't have shield walls that we can crash against, because we don't have some of those other things. Does this need any tweaking for the game mechanics itself? Or should it just be played as kind of a capture the flag, move the flag, protect your flag bearer? Any
I think
thoughts
for a
there?
20, I think for a 20 on 20, a 3-minute resurrection time is too long.
Okay.
Even at just depending on how many people you have, just that many people, just it really, you got to take in consideration time on that one.
Okay.
In fact, I would, I'll bring back an idea I introduced a little while ago called the Valhalla pit, which is you get out of your resurrection box by fighting somebody and winning.
Ooh.
And that way you don't have to worry about a marshal with a timer. You just got to pick a fight with somebody, beat them, and then you're out.
I wonder about the substitution thing. It seems kind of silly, I guess, for rapier. I mean, having alternates, I guess, to step in, because for one thing, rapier people don't normally bail out very often during a melee, and if they do, I mean, are there really that many people who weren't there to start with that are hanging out on the outside going, "Oh, I want to play. I'll just stand here until somebody gets tired."
It might be guys in armor running for an hour who aren't used to it consideration.
Yeah. Because it just seems for rapier, I feel like that might be just like something that isn't necessarily needed as the substitution, but.
So just kind of what we set up at the beginning, just bear in mind that a scenario like this being run at Penzic for this situation has been over-engineered to make sure that there are no accusations of cheating or favoritism and all the other things that come into play when you have people being very overly aggressive about the outcome. We do have a discussion from the chat, which is basically, we know that the focus is adopting this scenario to rapier. So why don't we try focusing on the outcomes? So basics of what is this, and then figure out how to incorporate that into a rapier scenario. So the basics of what this is it's a 50 on 50. It's a mid-sized to large-sized melee, depending on where you come from.
It's playing capture the flag.
It's capture the flag.
For an hour.
With a mandatory rest time if you die. So that you
and that's a consideration based on field structure.
Mm-hmm.
How are the flags reset? Do you know? I don't see anything there about how the flags are reset.
I don't either, and I don't see if they just stay where they are when you die.
I don't know.
Hold called to reset.
No. Yeah, is there a hold? What is a points word?
Yeah, I've never fought in the heavy battle. So I'm basing this on hearsay and hearsay. So if you die holding the flag, should it drop?
I'd say yes.
I'd say so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another thing that you could do is have multiple flags at that specific spot. You're only allowed to take one flag per run. And whoever gets like all 10 flags or if you get all 10 flags, you win, or whoever has the most flags at the end of an hour. So that way you don't have to reset them.
Would you need a flag dispenser?
Yeah, basically, and you're only allowed, per the scenario, rules, you're only allowed to take one flag per like you have to bring that flag back to your base before you can get another one.
And as soon as it's capped, the next one becomes available?
Yeah.
Okay.
As soon as you get your flag into the point area, then the next flag is available. So that way you would have multiple times to try to, and if you get all 10, then that ends the scenario, or whoever gets the most at the end of the hour. So
I
that
think
way
that
there's
worked.
kind of two different victory conditions at that
You would
point.
just need some communication between the ends, but I think that would totally work. Yeah.
Is that one flag out in play at a time per side?
Yeah.
Or
Side.
flag?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
2 flags out there, so you could either try to get your flag back or stop the other side from taking their flag back.
Exactly.
Or both. Like if part of your team is grabbing the flag, and part of your team is grabbing their flag, and part of your team is rescuing your flag.
That solves a lot of problems too about fighting over a dropped flag, and about some of the dangers of scrumming over something like that, trying to get your person with a free hand there.
If the enemy drops my flag,
Well, but you also have to consider I cannot get a different flag until that flag is in my barrack or in my res point or whatever, wherever you have to drop it off. It's the same concern then because there's only one at play at a time.
well, but like we've got the blue flag and the red flag.
Yeah.
Going these ways. Red flag's grabbed, or blue team has grabbed the red flag. Red flag has grabbed the blue flag. Red team has grabbed the blue flag. I'm on the red team. I kill the blue runner. They drop the red flag. Can I pick up the red flag?
Yes.
Well, once anyway, and then they think about it and go,
Yeah, no, you should totally be able to pick up a dropped flag. And then
well, but he's already got a flag.
No, somebody else. That's
Other
Oh,
team.
sorry, I thought you already had your flag, and you
Yeah.
killed the flag bearer on the other side, and we're asking if you could pick up that flag too.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
So
see why
yeah.
you can't take your flag back to the
Can I rescue my team's flag? Can I rescue my flag and take it back to res point?
I would.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's
definitely
the
part
point.
of yeah, that's the point of the scenario. And
Yeah,
then I
that's
think the other thing that you could do too is as flags get to a point position. So if the other team gets your flag all the way to their thing and it's worth a point, you could just do a field hold, and then that could also reset that flag back to its starting point and release everyone who it needs to be rezzed. So instead of doing your 3-minute res every time, you could do a mass release at every point, and then start the scenario as soon as that flag's reset. Start the scenario back up again. Everybody where they are. The flag that was still in play on the field is still in play on the field, and you could do it that way as well.
that's a one way to do it, but I'm not the biggest fan of that because that makes it stop every who knows how long, and I just feel like that would extenuate the time that this entire scenario would take.
So,
But
So go ahead.
we have a question from chat. So if you were adding to that, Warwick, go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say, I like the idea, but you could simplify it by saying, if I die with the flag, me and the flag are now at a play, and you have to go get another one. And so nothing stops. Everything just keeps going. That flag is gone.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it too. Just have an unlimited supply of flags that you're at each point, and as a flag gets taken out of use, it's gone. Yeah.
That was actually where
As
I
soon
thought
as
you
the
were going
flag
with.
gets grabbed, basically you kill and the person who's carrying it dies. That flag.
Yeah. So they go back to the res point, drop the flag at the flag position, so it can be retrieved by another person, and that's just a failed play.
Okay,
Or
so it does
potentially-
reset. It goes back to the flag
Yeah.
base.
Flag place, but goes back to the flag place.
So we have a question. We have a question from chat. What would happen if you hid the flag? Could you hide the flag?
Wistric.
That's why it's on a 6-foot tall pole.
No, I said that
but if
accusing.
you're dispensing it, if you got a flag dispenser, then
No, because that was
Yeah.
back in the episode 3 where it was like, what
I
happens
was
behind it?
gonna say, we've had scenarios like that in the past, and the rule has always been you cannot hide the flag or in any way keep it where others cannot see it or take it if the scenario calls for it.
That's
Because
the
at that point,
fundraiser.
you're just asking to get hit in the cup at that point.
in other words, don't be that person.
Yeah.
It's the
Don't be
fundraiser.
that
Does this,
person that shoves a flag down your pants.
right?
You
Does
don't wanna
that
be
make
that
it more
person.
fun? That doesn't make it more fun. That just makes people pissed off.
So
So-
don't be that person.
Oliver, to ask that question as well, what happens if you leg and leave the flag bearer? Bearing in mind that some Penzics have knee walking, so maybe this is a rule that should be clarified. Is there knee walking in this scenario, or should there be?
How is there not knee walking?
Depends on the kingdom.
Friends, we don't have knee
It does
walking.
depend on the kingdom.
It's in the new rules now.
We don't
Yeah,
have
but
knee walking. Welcome
some
to
kingdoms
Kentucky,
still
where
don't
you
allow
can't do
that.
anything fun.
Guys are crazy.
So let me ask a question about knee walking in general.
10 years we've been knee walking.
You can knee walk, but what stops you? Can anything stop you from knee walking? Hitting you in the leg again above the thigh stop knee walking?
And according to the new rules, yes.
Specific about that.
The new society rules, yeah. If
Oh,
you
wait,
get,
we have clarification in chat.
So-
Society rules permit knee walking so long as the shot was knee or lower.
So
So-
thigh them and leave them.
sign them, and I mean that's part of the technique or the. Sorry, I'm a little drunk.
You just have to hand it off, I guess, at that point.
Right,
Yeah.
and so that's the next question. We can hand off.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess unless you want to keep your flag out of play, and then you just
Oh.
keep your person who's holding your flag on the ground, and everybody protect that person, and then that flag is never back in play.
So another thing to consider is, let's say that you can only have one flag dispensed at a time until you hit a certain point. Once you hit a certain point in the field, another flag can be dispensed.
Too many variables in the air, I think, at that point.
It just got really confusing.
Well, I think it would work if you had if it was a big field with a lot of people. You could do that. I think.
Well,
you
if
could
we're
do
looking
something
at
like that,
75
right?
versus 75, I think that
Well, I
qualifies.
heard 20 versus 20 or 50 versus 50, but I'm not quite sure what our
It
numbers
kind of
are.
varies, like do these rules become less applicable at different scales? Like, does whatever rule we're talking about useful when you've got 50 people in the field, but not when you've got 20?
I think that's part of scaling the scenario, though.
So that's actually what I have in my notes for this, and I kind of want to wrap this one up since we're getting a bit in the weeds with breaking it. But what I have in my notes for this particular scenario, please jump in as I go through them, is that we should take a look at scaling this, meaning that the res time should be revisited, the field size should be revisited, and the and how the goals are set up on either side should be revisited.
And-
Gauntlet. Oh, sorry. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, and the size of the flag should be revisited depending on how many people you have on the field.
Too big to fit down Wistric's pants, I believe, is the proper size.
Well, it's like if you've
Have you
got
seen
70
my pants?
if you've got 75 people, you don't want a flag this big because everyone's going to be like, who the hell has a flag? But, if you've only got 20, then you can have a flag this big,
And then, so some of the other things we revisited were rules to be clarified. So a gauntlet should probably mean a free hand and or authorized for rigid parry, depending on if the flag is fragile or maybe used as a parry. The next question we had was, do flags reset, or should you have like a flag dispenser, which is kind of a great idea. I might borrow that for the next time I run one of these. Is there a hold when the flag bearer dies? Does the flag drop and stay? Is there knee walking? What happens if you leg the flag bearer? And can we hand off the flag? Or is your bearer for that entire play? Any others to add to our list of critiquey tweaks for Iliador? Any ideas on field setup or anything along those lines?
I mean, you can always add obstacles, but that's just part of setting up your field.
And
Are
the way
you
this
gonna allow
is
RBGs?
nice open field on this.
All right.
Are you going to allow RBGs? Would be an interesting question, because that would change it dramatically.
Or spears.
Okay, so I'll put in weapon considerations.
And where can I buy a flag dispenser?
I'm sure IKEA has one. RBGs and or spears. All right.
So
Ready?
I'm now trying to figure out how to rig the baby wipes dispenser that has become part of my daily life, to just load it with flags, so you can just yank one out.
No, they need a pole because you shouldn't be able to shove those down your pants.
Well,
Exactly.
it could be, you could just be one of those paper towel dispensers that you have in a bathroom. You could just load it with silk flags.
But you still need the pole. Yep.
Or just, you
Gotta
know,
keep
put
them on
like
the pole.
if you've got hooks and then you have to like unhook it each time you go.
Oh, God.
Can you
No.
imagine doing that with like leather gloves on and holding a sword? No.
And then
No,
the
no, no,
flag.
it's just a little hook that you just pull up. It's not that difficult.
You could have a limited, so for the flag dispenser, instead of having like an infinite number, you could say there's only 10 flags aside, and if it's destroyed, it's destroyed.
Mhm.
Or if
So
you're
we'll
a
talk
magician,
after
you can
I've got
keep
a way of
pulling-
doing cheapo redneck flags.
You
But
just need David Copperfield on your team, so you can just keep pulling flags out of his sleeve.
All right.
chapter 1, chapter 2. So next scenario. Let me pull this on over. Town alley battle with Mara, Eric starter. No, come on over here. All right.
Alibaba?
I may
Well,
have
now we are
forgotten how
going-
Google Chrome works briefly.
What? How much rum have you had?
I've had no rum.
What?
Nothing but
About
whiskey.
this much.
How much whiskey have you had? Oh.
One shot
Wait,
of
this wasn't part of the homework.
It was. I have that one.
Was
Was
part of the homework?
Yes, this was. I have that one. It
Two
was
of
the
my
one with the
little
pretty
brown
picture.
glass shot glasses of this. That's just brandy. Okay.
Please.
Yeah, I
talk
like
to
this
me.
one because they had pictures.
Oh, this one. Okay, this wasn't the. Okay, never mind.
Yes, I drew a map because I'm a fucking overachiever.
No, that's good.
From Mid-Round.
I know that's
Maps are perfect. 'Cause
I still have
for
this
those
in
of
the
us that
binders.
can't
maps are
visualize,
important for like how fighter flow is going to happen and identifying where you're going to have the real choke points and all of that.
and it saves me 10 minutes of trying to figure it out in my head, which is awesome.
Right.
Panelists, questions?
Oh, you're not going to do your little
We got to do a
David
black.
Attenborough?
Mara, walk us through it.
What is this?
So this is kind of made out of spite originally. There's a story for the spite, but that's probably not for this section. I basically wanted to write a RPG
But
scenario
it's
that did
totally
not
for
suck.
this episode. That story has to happen.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, I wanted to write an RPG scenario that didn't suck. And I actually have play tested this, just not at large level. So it's basically a town battle. There, you saw the map a few seconds ago. There's buildings. There's 3 time checks you're gaining for possession of flags that are scattered across this town. RBGs are in play until the first time check. I think I put DFB in there. If I didn't, well, assume there is DFB because I like DFB. So yeah, RBGs are in play until the first time check. After that, there's like a general hold. Sorry, I've been drinking too. And then from then on, for the second 2 time checks, there's no more RBGs the rest of the battle. So yeah, it's a town battle with buildings and flags and possession. And I'm originally from the Mid-Realm. I currently live in North Shield, so when I wrote it with an eye for Penzic and for people gaming rules at Penzic, because that happens. Which is why I have detailed out the rules for the RPGs, the size of the field, the buildings. I actually really, really like my buildings because the doors don't face each other on purpose, so that you can't just go skirting right across the entirety of the field by going through the buildings. You have to go outside or through an alley if you want to go across the field. So, but yeah, this is my Spite RPG battle. I've play tested it for about 15 to 20 people on a side. It was a simple day, so that's about how many people were playing at the time. I have not had it for larger than that, but the initial play tests was really positive for that 1 year. And yeah, that's it. That's all I got until y'all start ripping apart.
Okay, so the spite informs your objective with this scenario.
What?
What were you trying to avoid, and what were you trying to achieve?
I was trying to include RBGs in a Penzic battle in a fashion that couldn't be gamed and would still not alienate people from wanting to participate in the battle. So that's why RBGs are in play for the first third, but not for the final 2/3 of the battle. Because that way people with their RBGs can get out and play with their RBGs and have it count for something. But it's only good for one time check. After that, the people who are, because they happen, the people who don't want to play in a battle with RBGs can, in all honesty, just wait out until that first time check happens and then jump in, because it's a res battle, who cares?
Okay, I love that.
RBGs are a defining factor in the overall win. Like, you might win by 1 point, but there's still 2 time checks that are not defined by whether RBGs are in play.
2 questions real quick. Actually, a question and a comment. First off, I love the concept of how you got RBGs out of play by weather. That's amazing. I love that. That's really, really nice. Second, is there a maximum number of RBGs per side or number of shots total per side?
Actually, yes. 3 shots per gun, 2 guns per person maximum.
So everybody could have a gun.
Everybody could have 2 guns.
2 guns.
Yes.
But would you want to limit that if one side only has like 6 guns amongst them and the other side has 25 guns?
I would go with no, because, like I said, there's only 1 time check that those are going to be affected by, that the RBGs would have any effect on. But obviously, if someone steals this, they can modify that to whatever makes them happy.
So we had RBG issues here as well. And we came up with a convention that you might want to consider for this as an alternative to your already very excellent idea, which is what we do is we make the sides bring the same amount of shot. So, and typically the way we do that is we have them bring all their shot out and count it. And if one side has 50 shot and the other side has 65 shot, both sides have 50 shot. There's no gleaning. You shoot them, they're gone, and then you don't worry about it. And now it actually becomes strategic in how it's being used. Some people may use it at the beginning to hold houses. Others may use it at the end because they want to be able to do a push. You might have your war leader take half the shot and put them in his pocket or her pocket and distribute the rest of it around. And I found it's made, what you're trying to do here, I very much admire, because it's what we struggled to do here for years. And this actually really, really helped, because RBG battles become an arms race, right? You've got one household with 300 shot and 50 muskets, and they're just going to run over the field if there's no limits on that. Especially this is my household, as what I'm describing, quite frankly. We would have dedicated reloaders, right? And so when I actually started running scenarios, I had to fix what we broke. And that's how we actually fixed it, was not by limiting how many shots a person could have, not by limiting how many guns they could have. We simplified it down to both sides have X number of shot, use them however you like, whenever you want. And we would actually do that sometimes we would do that for the entire war. Like, you have 50 shot for the war, figure out how you're going to use them.
I think that'd be another good way to answer Oliver's question. If one side had 6 guns, the other side had 25, well, y'all all have the same amount of shot. Good luck. That would even that part out too.
Yeah, I think what you've done is really good. I think it's great. So I'm just throwing it out, not as something better, but as a possible alternative.
So Warwick, out of curiosity, you said that your group would sometimes like just hold on to their guns and not use their shots for the whole thing and maybe use them sometime later. What do you guys do with your guns when you're not using them? Do you just hold them in your hand and use them as an offhand, or do you have holsters? Or
so we would, one of the things we would always do is you get a scarf of some type and you tie it around your waist with a knot, and then you can put something like these in your belt.
Okay, so you have a gun in your belt and you have 2 weapons as well?
Yep, sword and dagger, sword and shield, and a couple of RBGs tucked along the sides. You got it.
Then what do you do with your offhand weapon when you're using your gun?
I stick it in my belt.
Okay. Now, Oliver, just out of curiosity, do we allow that in our kingdom to have a weapon that is just tucked in a belt, that isn't on the field, that isn't actually in a hand? We don't allow that, do we?
I have to go back and double check that. We never come actually across that per se. We allow people to put their RBGs into their belts, but I don't think we allow daggers to go into belts.
Yeah, I don't think we do either. I don't think you're allowed to have a weapon not in your hand, just on your person's.
So just, I know this is about me, it's about you, Moira, but I want to show you this. Like, this is, like, that's how we carry our shot out in the field, over the shoulder.
Y'all get
I've got
fans,
right?
I mean, I just recently put together a leather. Obviously, this is not a
shut up
dagger.
about the dagger, Gio.
And that's a little one.
I'm talking about my provost who actually made one for his dagger. I'm just using this as an example. But the thing is this hooks onto my belt, and I can draw it, and it's secured. So would you guys allow that?
I don't think we do, actually. I could be wrong, because I haven't been active in the last year. Well, obviously no one's been active in the last year, but the previous year I haven't been that active. So I mean, I could be wrong, but when I was really active, I know that Kaid did not allow you to have a weapon on the field that was not in play or not in your hand.
So I've added this to the rules to be clarified for the scenario, which is, can RBGs be in your belt, or do you need a free hand to draw and use them?
Yeah, I mean, it does play to her scenario. I mean, I'm just kind of curious, if she does adopt his scenario tactics as far as like letting people hold on to their shots or keep their shots. What did they do in that scenario with their weapons? What's allowed?
We have people come out with bandoliers that have pistols down them.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. We have very few guns in Kaid, and we don't use them very often in scenarios. We usually, when we do scenarios at events, we'll run like maybe 1 or 2 scenarios the entire day that actually allow RPGs, and then the rest of the scenarios do not allow them.
Right.
So we have.
Yeah,
very
we do. I think most kingdoms feel the need to limit RPGs because they can really unbalance a scenario or ruin it even, right?
Yeah.
You have to design around them if you want to use them, as Moira has done.
Yeah, no, and that's a good solution for that. But I am just curious though, like what the conventions are in the different kingdoms as far as offhand weapons and things like that.
One of the things I notice about this that serves as a counterbalance to RBGs that usually doesn't show up is this line that I've highlighted. Equipment is impervious to RBG shot, except you can't parry. Usually there's that, if you shoot a shield, the shield's gone, and that whole, like, even being able to tell whether or not your shield has been hit by a rubber band.
So
yeah.
I did that because the one Penzic where we had RBGs in a war point, in a major part of a war point, when I fight melee, I personally go out with a large shield. It's my favorite. I love it. And that particular time, because RBGs could destroy shields, sometimes we can't tell if we've been hit by an RBG or not, like if it hits your shield or hits your equipment. And then it becomes a martial duty to let you know that you've been hit. And I don't know about y'all, but I have trust issues. And I know there's a couple times where I am pretty darn certain there was nothing what hit my shield, and I had a marshal call my shield dead. So this,
I have to ask you at this point, someone touch your shield inappropriately? Is that why you have trust issues?
Oh,
Don't answer that. Don't answer that. Move on. Move on.
So
yeah,
if you have an
that rule
RBG with a
to
lot, go ahead. Sorry, Mario. Please go ahead.
that rule was to take the marshals out of the equation of calling shots, essentially. If a marshal wouldn't call a shot in a tournament with your blade, then marshals should not be able to call shots with RBGs.
But you don't
Yeah.
clarify that in your rules. You just say, if you scroll back down, you just say you cannot parry a shot with a blade. You don't say anything about a shield. So can
Well,
you parry a shot with a shield?
I'd consider equipment as impervious to cover
I
that.
would too.
So a shield doesn't get taken out by a shot. So I can just block the shot with my shield, is what you're saying.
So Moira, one of the ways you can ensure people take your shots is you don't use little pistols. You use something with a real throw to it. And they'll take the shot. I'm just saying.
And so then are you allowed to
And
like
if you would
Captain
like to
America?
acquire one such gun, you can buy one from Warwick for this low price.
Of $9.99.99. So,
3 payments though.
In your scenario, then, are you allowed to like Captain America things? So like if you see the person next to you is about to get shot, can you like woohoo with your shield and block the shot?
God, I hope so.
Yeah. Oh my God, how awesome.
If I saw a blade coming
Queen
in,
on
why
the
wouldn't I
field,
block
you're
the
like, oh, I'm
blade?
going to save you, Your Majesty. Woo.
so we've beaten
We've-
this to death. We've talked about RBGs.
Ass.
Can we talk about
can-
breaking it now?
Can we please both talk about breaking it? But I have a couple of questions from the chat and from just our read through that need to be clarified while we have Mara here.
And now she's
Who
gone.
just left here. So we had some questions. How large should these buildings be? And I have some questions for the panelists involving, hey, Wistric, can you show me the map?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have some questions about the top and the bottom row of buildings. How do you keep those in play, and what function do they serve other than to make your hay bale volunteers cry first thing in the morning? So first, what size is the field? What size are the buildings? Second, how could you bring those top and those bottom buildings into play a little bit more, or did you find that they were being played with when you ran your play test?
When I ran the play test, we didn't have 9, we only had 6. I'm trying to remember. I'm also reading through the scenario. Okay. I think the buildings were all maybe, I don't want to say more than 10 feet wide, because I wanted the doors to vary between sizes. So the doors were going to be between 1 to 2 hay bales wide. So that would mean the building will need to be at least 4 to 5 hay bales wide.
That's 10 hay bales. That's 10 to 15 hay bales each.
Yes.
That's like $50 to $100 a building.
So bear in mind
Or
that
it's
this is
Pinzik.
constructed
It's
It's straw.
Oh,
Strawberries
that's-
are way cheaper.
That's true. It's not a poor little colonial kingdom like mine.
Oh, okay. So when I've also done buildings at practices or at war practices, if we didn't have hay bales, you can also use sticks and rope. I mean, I've done that on a budget too.
So the only thing I'd say is like one level hay bale I find is extremely dangerous. One level high hay bale is just a tripping hazard.
We have done for doors. At doors, they're usually too high for larger battles. Some of the battles at Pinzik have rooks now. They're like actual wooden like structures. They're kind of cool, but we don't have a lot of those yet. So okay, so the first question was how big are the
I
buildings?
love the fact that you've designed a scenario that right out of the gate needs a minimum of $1,000 in hay.
Hey, we
Hey,
don't
hey,
stereotype
hey.
here.
Hey,
So
Okay.
I've rented hay bales for an event before. It is not $1,000 to rent hay bales.
Rent? What do you do? So do they have to be in the same condition you got them in when you return them?
Yeah,
And is that a thing?
Yes.
I've never had a problem.
Well, when you
Well,
don't run or knee walk in your kingdom, then yeah, it's not an
except
issue.
for the Penzic.
Okay, I guess that's where it comes
it's just
from.
painless.
Yeah, no, the Penzic ones die rather spectacularly by the end of it. But if it's just a single day event, renting hay bales, I don't remember what the price was, but it actually wasn't. It was a couple years back.
We
when I
usually
did
just
it, but-
we usually just rake them over the field when we're done and walk away from them, quite frankly.
Oh.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Oliver, but last year's Great Western War or 2019's Great Western War, didn't we do a field setup similar to this with just one level of hay bales?
Yeah, we stack them one high or two high, depending. If it's one high around, we tell you could fight over it. If it's too high, you can't fight over it. And we have a subset of what is at the actual armored side where they have built castles, which are 6 hay bales high.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, but
I know, it's
we've
awesome.
had almost this exact same setup at a Great Western War in 2019, and we did a battle around it with the same concept of the doors being in different areas where you couldn't just walk through places. So
Yeah.
we did almost the exact same thing, and I mean nobody cried about the cost of the hay bales.
Also done a scenario like this with rope and poles. I mean, you don't have to use hay bales.
Yeah, we did the same thing at Ontario West. We do the same thing at Ontario West War, very, very similar. And then they get repurposed for bridges and stuff. But we don't have any concept of renting hay bales.
So each of these buildings is 15 feet to 20 feet by 20 feet, just kind of based on the math you gave us. And then it's 20 yards to each res point. I hope that answers the question from the chat on how large this is. This is a big scenario built for a big field with a lot of people, but could be scaled by removing some of the buildings, as Mara said with her playtest. So the next question we have from the chat is, are the streets one way?
Like, you can only walk one direction down them?
So I'm saying, like, can you, like, res points, can you only res from one direction? Because that would determine whether or not where I set up my forces to block people as far as controlling the flags.
I would say you have to, you res on the same side of the field that you started at.
The res lines are up here, top and bottom, but it's a res line, not a res point.
Yeah, res line, not a res point. Res
Yep.
point is too much of a chokehold.
Yep. Does that help, Gio?
Yeah, because I'm just sitting here looking at this. How I would beat this is trying to put my forces up to where you can't enter my town with kill pockets and inside the building itself.
I guess that answers the question as to why you have 9 buildings, so that you can do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, and that was kind of my next question. So looking at the scale of this map, it looks to me like the streets are about 20 feet wide and the alleys are about 10 feet wide. Are there any considerations or concerns with, since let's pretend this is for Penzic, because you even have Curry Road in your scenario that you wrote up. Are there any considerations or concerns for having, let's say, about 400 or 500 people on a field this size with this many obstacles? Or if there are there any solutions like opening it up a little further, making the roads wider, etc.? Panelists, go.
The main danger of having single level high hay bales is people retreating into the hay bale, going ass over tea kettle, slamming their head into the ground and getting a concussion. So that would be, and when you've got 400 or 500 people in the field, that shit's going to happen.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Well, and that's part of you as a fighter. If you're going to charge people, don't charge them into a fucking hay bale.
It happens.
I understand that, but I'm just saying this is one of my pet peeves is just because you are a fighter on the field does not mean that you can marshal yourself and other fighters to not fuck up people over.
Don't be a Richard.
Don't be a Richard. So one of the other questions we had from the chat is this big enough to run the new spears? And if it's not, or if it is, how should it be scaled, or does it need to change at all?
How far
How
between?
big are the buildings? Yeah. Everyone wants
They're
to know.
about
the same
20
question.
feet long by 20 feet long.
The
So
building.
that's basically 2 spear fighters could fight from the doorways inside the. They could stand in each doorway and fight. Basically, that's how big they are.
So we make the streets wider.
How big
Well,
are the
it
streets?
means anybody inside the building is a sitting duck for somebody with a spear, is what it means.
No. It just depends on how big the room is.
Yeah, I will say that when we ran a scenario similar to this, it honestly, even with all the door openings and the settings and everything, almost entirely became a line battle in between the buildings. Very few people went inside the buildings or went around anything like that. It basically became this group between these 2 buildings, this group between these 2 buildings, keeping them from coming to our side and keeping us from going to that side.
So,
and
like-
it broke down into a line battle.
Like where? Like I'm annotating this. Like how would they do that?
So, well, I mean, I can't
How are
point
you
to
doing?
anything.
So you're talking about Great Western?
So if
Yeah,
you go to the very
Great
top
West.
and select annotate, you can draw on it.
Well, you can maybe. I'm not that smart.
So what Battista is talking about is Great Western, where the actual size of our field
Oh, you can't, Wistric, because it's yours.
small.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Just you annotate. Annotate.
So I'm right. So Key, like, where were they lining up?
So basically, if you take the 3 middle ones there,
Yeah.
you have your 3 on top. So call that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like your
Yeah.
phone. So at 4, 5, and 6 is where people pretty much lined up in the halfway points of those buildings.
Like
No,
that.
down between the buildings.
Okay.
Go down.
All right. So
Down.
down this way.
Yeah.
Okay.
But across, obviously.
So like
So-
all the way
So
across.
take that original line that you drew. I don't know what you're making now. Take that original
Control
line that you
C,
drew,
Warwick,
bring it
Control C.
down between 4, 5, and 6.
So this is 4, right?
Yeah, that's
5
4.
and 6.
Yeah.
Draw this and draw this.
See where
way.
that little P is?
Yeah.
Draw your line from there to the other building.
Okay.
So
The
horizontal,
five.
not vertical.
Five.
Horizontal.
Between 4 and
Horizontal.
Am I
5.
describing this really
I think
bad?
the P is a
or-
flag.
Yay,
No.
there you go.
Got it.
Forks and
Yay!
drinking. That's what's happening.
It's hot.
It's
So
true.
that's what ended up happening. And when we did this, we ended up with, because our res was just like this. Res was at one team was on the top where that one is, and one team was at the bottom where that one is. We had flags set up in 3 different locations. And the 2 on the ends, like you have, I think she has it set up to where there's one on one end and one on the other end that's easy to get to. Those stayed pretty much non-contested the entire time. But the one that was right there in that prime little spot is basically where everyone was fighting. And it turned into a line battle across that to try and get that one flag. And very
So that's-
few, very
So-
rarely did anyone break through a line to get to
So
that
that's a
flag.
great observation. But I think, do you think because she has these doorways here and here that she could avoid that?
But people really didn't use the doorways. I mean, we had doorways as well. We had 2 doors in each thing, and it was very rarely that anyone would go inside a doorway, because a lot of times the doorways on that end are all on your own side anyways. So if you go in it, you're just getting up behind your own people. And
Right.
the same with the doors on the other side. And if you see how she has the doors, the only place she has doors that would really matter as far as changing a battle are maybe the 2 on the 5 spot where it goes through. I mean, if you can maybe get, but then what you're going to do is you're going to end up with your fighters inside that 5 building still doing a
Oh.
line battle.
So
We
my
have a question from chat that might kind of play into how that line breaks up. What if the doorways are on the corners instead of the walls? What if you rotate the houses 45 degrees
Diamonds.
Mhm.
so that you have access not horizontally in, but diagonally?
That would kind of change it, because depending on where you come in at, you could use those doors to break through. especially if DFBs are allowed. Ooh, baby.
I think my one fear would be because if you're working with diamonds, right? Is that what you're saying? We're working with diamonds?
I believe
People
so.
are gonna be cutting corners and maybe tripping over hay bales would be my one thing that could potentially be dangerous there.
So
No, but they're talking about opening up the corners and putting doors on the corners. So there actually wouldn't be hay bales on the corners. Those would be open doors.
Oh, so there'd just be nothing there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
So
would,
that's
yeah,
what they're
that would,
talking
that would
about.
work.
so the
Like
other
the ones at the in that center row,
Yeah, I get it.
cut off the corners.
Yeah.
That would be safe.
the other question too is, could you widen those doorways to make it more inviting to go into those side buildings and utilize the buildings a little bit more?
Yeah, that's part of the scenario description. You can have it anywhere from 3 to 6 feet.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
But how do you not get the line battle? Like what did you guys do, Keith?
we did a line battle.
Yeah, but we did after watching that and seeing what happened, what could you have done to avoid a line battle?
Well,
Break through the line.
we did the scenario twice, I think, right? Or yeah, I think we ran it twice because we changed the sides for the teams.
Which
and
didn't
one of
change
the-
much overall.
I'm sorry.
The biggest issue we had there is the hay bale town took up almost the entire rapier melee field, so there wasn't much room to maneuver, and we could not move the buildings far enough apart to make it worthwhile. We have a very tiny space at Great Western in order to do stuff. There's this ginormous multi-acre fighting space, which the armored side takes up 80% of, and we're left with a small section on the end. And so
It
we
sounds
make
like you need to talk to your marshals about that to let you have some space.
Probably
Oh,
a good one.
Sunshine.
I'll let you talk to them.
Let's not go there.
All right. So
I
we
can't
have
believe that. Oh, go ahead. It feels to me you could solve this with your door placement by thinking about where the doors are. You could probably encourage people to go where you want them to go, like Wistric said, or reorientating it, or different numbers of them.
Credit, that's Virgil. But yeah, if you have this doorway facing res, that's a straight run. If you don't have any doorways facing res, they have to go around. That makes them at least take a longer path. And it makes other paths more appealing.
It also depends on the flag placement as well.
Yeah, it
Right,
does.
so go into that, Gio. You made a comment in chat. Where would you put the flags?
Well, unfortunately, no matter what you do on this type of scenario, you're going to end up with a line battle. Just because if what I would do is, depending on where the res is, I'm going to set up between 1-3, 2-5, 3-6. And so that's going to end up, and even if you were to put your flags diagonal, unfortunately, the only way to really change this is, like you guys were saying, is change the door placement so that way there's options for me to be able to go somewhere other than a line.
Yeah.
What if you put a flag here, here, and here?
Then you're going to get a diagonal line.
Yeah.
You have a lot less options there.
You do, but you're still going to end up with the diagonal line battle.
Yeah, then all the fighting's gonna be centered on that center flag because the other two are already gimmies for the other side.
Yeah, and that's like I said, that's what we ran into. We ran into, nobody wanted to go around. But I wonder if you made your inside aisles smaller and your outside perimeter wider, would that encourage more people to go out and around as opposed to lining up?
I was about to ask, what if you put this on an oversized field with DFB enabled? Would that avoid the line battle?
Yes, it would. Very much so, because
You're saying wider streets, wider, more space? So people can't butt up against the buildings?
No, I'm talking wider perimeter. Just straight up perimeter. Give Atlantia the outfield to run in. Give Meridies the outfield to run in.
Or
if
even
you had multiple,
I'm sorry. Even if you take away
multiple like areas to come in, that would clusterfuck everything.
Yeah, or like, what if you took away 1 and 9? Like, if you took away 1 and 9, that would, and then put your flags in 4, 5, and 6. That would open up 2 big areas for people to fight in that won't necessarily make you a line battle, because people can get in around that outside to get into that house to that flag. So you may end up with fighting around in those areas as well, as opposed to everything funneling into a line. I don't know though. I could be full of crap.
Mara, have we destroyed your scenario, or are any of these suggestions actually helpful?
No, I like rearranging the map. The map is I mean, the map is always up for debate. When I wrote the scenario originally, I was honestly more focused on incorporating the RBGs in a non-sucky fashion. So I'm always pretty game for negotiating how the map is laid out until Leon is called. After Leon is called, you leave the map alone.
Do you think it's
Thank
possible
you.
that because this is such a geometric form, it's a square, it really predicates people closing off angles. If this was like a random dispersal of buildings with random distances between them, people wouldn't have as much luck. They wouldn't have sorry, Wistric, yes, what?
Like the D&D town battle.
I know.
No.
What you do is you incorporate your RPGs by putting freaking windows that like have line of sight. And then like people can use the RPGs to shoot through windows at people who aren't even looking at them. That's what you
Back
do.
to I have trust issues.
Another thing to consider is don't make the town a grid. Put
Well,
buildings.
that's what I'm saying, right? Don't make it this uniform shape, right?
Yeah.
Mara, were you at Pinzik 40?
Yes.
Okay. I'm totally.
I was at Penzic 40. I was not fighting at Penzic 40. There's a difference.
Ah.
I probably heard the bitching.
So this was the town battle layout at Pinzik 40.
Yes.
Because yes, I have that on hand. And at 205 feet wide, this still managed to become a line battle. So I think if we're looking at numbers versus scale, this actually gives us a good idea of spacing. And it's 12 houses versus 9, which isn't that big of a difference. And also they made the fault of having their doorways all facing towards the res. But yeah, I think especially at Penzic, like Oliver was talking about how limited their field is at Great Western. At Penzic, where we've got 400 feet. I mean, from the commentary from the panel, it sounds like if we can use that, we can definitely make it less likely to devolve to a line battle.
And to answer your question earlier, Bruce, we did have spears in one of the scenarios. So like one time when we ran it, we did have spears. We have a limited number of spears, and we did have RPGs, I believe, as well. And they really didn't affect the battle that much. They didn't change the tide or anything like that. I mean, they pissed off a few people who don't like getting one-shotted by a freaking spear when your blade's only 32 inches long. Not that I'm taking it personal. But
spears are probably getting their own episode.
But yeah, so I mean, we used them in both scenarios, and it really didn't affect the scenario at all. It really didn't change the tide at all.
So we've talked about the field layout. We've talked about the RPGs, which is what Mara was really focused on, and she did an excellent job as per the panel. So the last thing I kind of want to talk about here and direct the panel's attention to, even though it's a little bit like the attention span of a goldfish right now.
I was just laughing at her. She's like all about the RPGs, and we're like, the buildings are square.
Yeah. So I want to draw the panel.
So Marshall's fixate on some things, and the scenario is fixate on some things, and there are other things that play into the playability of a scenario.
I want to draw y'all's attention to the victory conditions. How would you break this? What are some of the Marshall concerns? And I'm going to do something that I saved for all of the other episodes, but haven't done for this one since it was going to be a little more free form. But I'm going to go panelist by panelist. First up is going to be Oliver. Oliver, with these victory conditions, do you see any considerations that should be taken into account in planning the scenario? Anything that could be tweaked to make it run better?
I tag on, come back in later.
Okay, fine. You get a rain check. Warwick, victory conditions. One sentence.
This is a tried and true This is tried and true victory condition. It's been proven to work.
Okay. Are there any marshal concerns that you see here?
I've stated them. I don't like one level high hay bale buildings. Yeah. Yep.
All right. We're all from Iowa and Indiana. The hay bales don't scare us anymore. All right. Key Battista. Sorry.
That's fine. Either way, I answered pretty much everything, but bad words. So it's literally the exact same way we did ours. 2 minutes, 15, 30, 45, exactly the same. The only difference is I don't know what the flags are, if they're actual flags. We used PVC with little caps. So the people actually had to go in, and the blue team had to put the blue cap on the little thing. And then if the yellow team won, they had to take the yellow cap off and put the blue cap on. And we kind of ran into some problems with that, because you got your people with the swords that are just like whack, and then you end up with like your chess timer, flying your thing flying across the field or whatever. But as far as everything else, I mean, it's exactly how we ran it with the timers and the side counts, and it worked out really well.
So I'm going to play off what you just said, Battista, and I'm going to ask Mara. Mara, how do you determine control of a flag? Does the flag have to be all the way up? What happens if it's half pulled? Or are you using flippy sticks? Does that not count? Or does it go to whoever had their hand on the flag at the time? Like, what would you tell your marshals?
I would say the color for the team has to be up.
Okay.
If it's half mast, then no point gets awarded.
Okay.
So do you have like an actual flag pole type thing?
We do.
Oh, that's cool.
We have pulley flags.
That
might have been
That's
a first
awesome.
fight project.
Yeah,
I do a lot of fight projects.
Our current general is an engineer and over-engineered the hell out of it. So we tested it.
I like that you have pulley flags, because the first thought I had was, how far away from where the flag starts can I take the flag?
Mm-hmm.
No, they're what I envisioned was pulley flags that are in a stationary position, because I've met people.
Yeah, and we've
Wistric, she's met you.
Yeah.
She has.
We've used the cap system for flag. We don't use flags usually. We either use like the cap system, or we've done like the like the Brazilian meat place, where it's like green for go, red for stop. I want more meat. I want less meat. Then we've used those kind of things as well. But you would think we're in a kingdom of freaking like set builders. You would think.
Wait a sec. Where do I go? Because I need to tap out because I've eaten too much Brazilian meat. Where is this place?
You guys still have Brazilian meat places there?
But you're like, no, please stop feeding me. Is that what you just said?
No, I don't use the red.
All right.
I think that's an option.
That is what she said. That's amazing.
Brazilian, like, it's the meat faucet. You have the green, like you have a coaster, and one side's green, one side's red.
Seriously, you guys don't have that out there? Oh my God, you were missing out. It is.
Well, he's a Canadian.
Little guys.
So he doesn't get to be American.
All right.
It's meat on a sword. No, they bring you meat on a sword. They bring the sword to your table.
Now you're just boasting. You're literally boasting at this point.
And then they walk away, and some other strange man comes over with another sword with a different kind of meat. And you just say, yes, yes, please, yes, please. And they just keep bringing you meat until you say,
Warwick,
no.
If you ever come out to Artemisia, I will take you out to this.
Yeah, seriously. Just like, if you have to fly through Atlanta anytime, like if you have to change planes in Atlanta, let me know. We'll take that 1 hour. We'll get you some meat faucet.
We'll get you meat on a stick, man.
Absolutely delicious, and we should all go out as a panel and get rip-roaring drunk, doing meat on a stick.
We're already doing that. What are you talking about?
Well, we're not doing the meat on the stick.
There's no meat on a stick here. We've only talked about spears. Don't pull it out, Gio. Keep it down.
This is my rum bottle, not my spear.
Very patiently.
All right. So Key hit on the point that I wanted to, and we redirected that. So I'm going to jump to Oliver next and ask if he sees anything in this scenario that he would possibly tweak or that he could see would be broken if we put it in front of Wistric to play. Oliver, 1 sentence, short answers, go.
Not as much. The only thing I would make sure people don't do is do a 1 minute to stop, because when you get down to, you say 1 minute till we stop and do a check, everybody starts ramping up and fighting really, really hard to control the flag. You never let the fighters know that there's a time limit. Plus I have one of the pulley flags if anybody's curious what they look like.
So in my experience, most of the time,
Like
the
with you?
times that the flags are pulled is inconsistent. Like it's not the same.
It's a window. Yeah, I wrote it as a window. So
And
when
they do that because some sides will have people on the side with a timer to tell their guys it's probably time to go hard, right?
I've been one of those people.
Right.
But I don't tell their guys. I usually tell their commanders, and then they can make decisions accordingly.
Right.
See,
But
we
no,
don't do
I'm
that,
not.
do we, Oliver? When
Oh.
we ran that, we didn't do that. We didn't give people a time. We were just like, that way you don't have people doing exactly that. You don't have people like making a big push at the end trying to get a flag or something. You just kind of do random checks.
So Mara,
We
actually,
have
this is in
marshals
context of
with their
Pinsic.
radios
Is
going,
that,
okay, everybody, check now.
Is the time check culture for Pinsic? That makes sense.
But no, reface.
So this whole battle is in the context of Pinsic, and is the like, we must announce when there is 1 minute left. SOP for Pinsic?
Not anymore. I think past, it's not been a thing for a while to, oh shit.
Uh-oh. I think she froze.
At least she has a drink in her hand.
Get a photo picture of that.
Shit.
Get a background.
Right?
All I heard was, oh shit.
I got oh shit as well, yeah. Also, somebody's phone is blowing up somewhere.
So to answer,
It's maybe mine. I can't figure out how to turn the volume. I'll just throw it in the other room.
okay, I can kind of answer that, Wistric. Like, we have to have the windows. That's something that gets negotiated very heavily, but we don't like it when the marshals announce when it is, because Joe Schmo gets very dangerous in that window. Is she back? Is she back? Or
She's
did she
gone,
drop
gone.
completely? Welcome
So
to
did
Fight the World.
anybody have any further questions regarding this scenario?
Talk about meat on a sword and have technical difficulties.
Sorry.
You've never been to one of the all-you-can-eat meat places?
I don't think
had
she
this
wants to
whole
talk about that anymore.
Yeah, we had this whole conversation. Where were you?
I was outside.
Don't get it started again. We don't need to talk about meat on a sword again.
Well, so let me do my recap on this one before we move over to the entire event scenarios. So with Mara's scenario, we wanted to talk a little bit about scaling, whether it was the guns, the ammo, the spears, the people, or the buildings. We talked a little bit about maybe revamping what the map looked like, but the fact that she met her goal in writing a scenario that made RBGs suck just a little bit less. We discussed a little bit about rules that could be clarified, such as can RBGs go in your belt, or do you need a free hand to utilize them? And how does control of the flag actually work? What is control? What would she tell her marshals? We did determine that she should probably clarify that it should be set up as a stationary, not a moving flag. And we also discussed moving the flags themselves on the map. But mainly for that one, she probably should revisit her map depending on how many people she expects to come play. The end. Next. While we wait for her to reconnect, maybe, or she ran out of hotel internet.
Unfortunately, John, who had submitted the 5th scenario, it is still during his work day and had to return to work. So he had to sign off. Which brings us to...
Well, that leaves a lot of unanswered questions.
It leaves a lot of unanswered questions. I've let him know that we have some questions that we will send his way. We'll get the answers back to the panelists. We'll try to, carry out this conversation, get answers, see what advice we can offer through whatever means is available.
This one had technical difficulties, right? Is it?
Moira's back.
Oh, is Maura back?
Mara!
Yeah, the hotel Wi-Fi decided to not.
Oh.
All we heard was "oh shit," and all it was a
And then you
picture
cut
of
out.
straddling your beer.
And it's unfortunate because we completely solved all the problems of your scenario and made it one of the best scenarios ever.
And then
you
forgot them all.
And you're gonna have to go back and watch the recording and sit through 2 hours and 23 minutes.
Of us talking about meat
About
on
meat.
stick.
Yes.
Oh, wait.
On a steak.
Well, that's a shame.
Oh, you can never have too much meat on a stick.
All right, so since you guys can't be with us, you can have too much. You just gotta make sure you have enough sauce. Anyway, since John cannot be with us and we need some clarifying questions,
I need a yellow card. Yellow card. Yellow card.
I am going to ask Wistric to lead us through our "no shit, there I was" moment, which is how we end every episode. And panelists, be on the lookout for additional messages regarding questions you want to send over to John. Not that you have to worry about that chat not blowing up. Anyway, Wistric, take us away with our conclusions. And yeah, we haven't beaten our record of length of episode yet, but we're coming close.
Oh,
We could keep going. I'm good. to go.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, seriously. So first I did want to plug the Fighting the World scenario building guide that we posted to the Fighting the World Facebook group, our Facebook page, which if you're watching this and you have not liked, subscribed to that page, please do so. A couple days ago, we posted the Building a Rapier Melee scenario checklist. It's a series of questions that helps you walk through basically the things we have considered here tonight, and gives you at the end a nice little template for how to describe your scenario, with commentary from Bruce and me. And
That's bonus content. You pay extra for that.
yeah.
Wait, people pay?
We throw it in for free.
If they pay you, they ain't paying me.
This is not the copy that's up on Fighting the World. We have a finalized PDF there. The template is in the works and should be on its way. And like Wistric just said, like and subscribe. We love hearing from you. It makes this so worth it.
And honestly, it's a living document. Our previous episode, our previous scenario episode building, whose scenario is it anyway? Panelists contributed to this. Some of them are on tonight. We've got more new panelists who also contributed. This is the product of a bunch of expertise. And if it can be improved, let us know, please. If you can use it, please do. Let's have awesome Rapier Melee scenarios in the SCA.
And before it's asked, please
21.
feel free to share. Share it to all your people.
Share.
Share
Invite your friends to like Fighting the World
it.
Facebook page.
Okay. No, Wistric. No. No.
But I'm supposed to, like, when this is a YouTube video, I'm supposed to point here and be like, hey, here's a, here's the link. Follow more.
So
Until
Wistric,
then, all right, panelists, your favorite, no shit, there I was. What's the craziest scenario? Like, weirdest, wildest, whatever, the one that, like, you remember, not the same old shit scenario. that you were part of. Did it work? Did it not? And did you break it? So Oliver is in my top left, right, whatever. So Oliver, go first, please.
Okay, well, I'm going to build on the RBG something back in the days of Australia when I was still quasi newbie, and one of my first introductions actually trying to run scenarios. It was at the end of the war and end of the day, and it was one large bear pit was the only thing left. So I snagged a bunch of people that wanted to do some more melee fighting, and we went over and I started designing the scenarios on the fly, and I got all the RBG people going, how can we play with our RBGs? And we didn't have enough marshals to surround the edges. So what I did was created what I called the Alamo, and I think Warwick did something similar as last time I talked about this,
Zulu
is
War.
that we had a hay bale building with windows and doors, and we put everybody with RBGs in that room, plus any extra swords people that wanted to fight with them in the Alamo. We had powder monkeys that could go outside and glean ammo that could not be killed. And it was an attrition battle of the fighters on the outside getting killed off, rezzing, and coming back in until they could bust their way into the Alamo and kill them. And it was an RBG user's heaven because they got to fire as many shots as they want, as fast as they could, and get ammo back. And it allowed them to play to an extent that they can't do in a normal scenario. Nobody actually busted it at that point. I'm sure it could be.
How would you have busted it, if possible?
Well, one of the things I did do, because it was becoming hard, I allowed the outside forces to create a bomb that blew a doorway in where there was no door before, so they could sneak in. The problem is the way I designed it, like you could not touch the powder monkeys, so they couldn't run out of ammo, or they couldn't be stopped from gleaning the ammo. The best way I can think of to have busted it was to simply.
But your attackers also had unlimited res, didn't they?
Yes.
So basically, they could fight all day.
Yes. It was just a matter of who got tired first.
To the puke.
So if anybody else has an idea of how to bust it, because I'm not sure.
And you time it. Well, I busted. How do you fix it? You mean you time it?
Yeah. There are ways to tweak it to make it do different things one way or the other, but trying to do a Wistric breaking the scenario, I don't know.
I mean, not everyone has to break things by pure.
Well, you said you can't kill the powder monkeys, but you didn't say you couldn't capture the powder monkeys and take them off the field and ply them with drinks and food.
I mean, there are ways. There are always ways.
I hear meat on a sword.
They didn't know any better.
Battista,
I
please.
hear meat on a sword works really well. If you want to get rid of a powder.
Work with me.
Yeah.
Yes. Battista, do you have an example for us?
Yeah, I do, and it's actually it was weird, and I think we're the ones that broke it. But I honestly cannot remember if it was Australia or Great Western War because I've slept since then. But it was a scenario where basically it was a town situation, and then they also had corrals. And the town situation, you were fighting over like 3 different flags that you had to get, like some of the other scenarios we talked about. But there was a side part of the scenario where you could move cows into the corral, and for every cow that you moved into the corral, you got a point. Somebody decided it would be a fun idea for the cows to be hay bales. So I don't know if you've ever spent an entire day fighting and then had to carry freaking hay bales around, but it's not that fun during a scenario. But I had my rogue squad at the time, which was, I Oliver, you would know Catriona and Todd and Takatora. So all of these like really tall and young, strapping people who can fight like 10 people just on their own and win. And I was like, hey guys, I got a better idea. Let's go get some cows. So I have all of these people like hauling hay bales basically. And the other team, they were all the rest of Kaid and the other team were all fighting over these 3 flags, which were all worth just 1 point each. And I was like, dudes, let's see how many cows we can get into the corral. We ended up getting 15 cows into the corral, and we won the scenario off of the cows because the other team won all 3 flags. And then they were like, they all thought they had won. And then the marshal came up and said, yeah, but there's 15 cows in that corral over there. So yeah, Kaid just won that. So that's how we won, was basically corralling cows into a corral, using your best fighters to haul cattle. So yeah, it was a fun scenario. And the other side never caught on to the cow thing, not once. They never looked over and went, why are those 4 people hauling hay bales over there? So we won the scenario.
What were the corrals made of? Question from chat.
Hay.
Hey.
Hey, I just wish I could have seen a black tiger doing manual labor for you.
Oh, Taka carries one all by himself.
Oh, I know. He's
Yeah.
from he lived in
what's
Ontario for
funny?
years. He's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, I know. And what's funny is, Taka, everybody, well, Taka, and the reputation that some of those people have. But Taka I was the commander of the rogue squad in Kaid for 5 or 6 years, and he was under my command the whole time. And I never once had an issue with Taka. I could say, Taka, go do this, Taka, go do that. He never once would say what or question me or anything. He always did exactly what I asked him to do. He was a great follower. We think
In my experience, a perfect gentleman.
Yeah, he is. He really is a nice guy, and he's very respectful of authority. And he knew that I was the head of the squad, and he was always very respectful to me. And a lot of people have problems with them, and I never did. I never had any issues with him at all. He was always just the perfect guy for me, as far as a fighter.
I followed.
Let me rephrase that. That didn't come out right at all.
Well,
he was great. But my rogue squad had a lot of what you would call, I guess would be referred as problem children on it, because they would all somehow listen to me, but they wouldn't listen to anybody else. So, but it was great because they were all great fighters, and it was a really fun squad. So, but anyways, that's my story. Hauling hay bales. Oh, wow, everybody got really quiet.
All right, Warwick, you're up next.
Oh, is it me? All right.
Yep.
So I was going to tell a sheep story, and then somebody told a cow story.
Oh,
And then I was going to tell an RBG story, and then somebody told an RBG story. So now I'm kind of stuck. So I'll just go with the RBG story because that seems to have been a thing tonight. So let's talk about RBGs.
Tonight.
So
And you've got
way back in the day, my squad was a bunch of misfits like yours. And but we were all Toritaka size. We're all tall and young and lean and badass. And it's probably our first major battle at an event called Clinton, which was a very important event here in Ontario, which would get over 1,000 people to it. And it was probably our premier camping event. And we line up and we advance on the other side, and we all get shot. Like, we're literally, all of us get shot by RBGs before we laid a sword on anybody. And that happened a lot that day. And so we all went home after that, and we said, well, apparently we need RBGs. And apparently we also need shields, because there was no RBGs destroy shields. So we mathed out the maximum silhouette for a war shield using the 512-inch surface area silhouette that was published in our rules, using the quadratic formula to make sure the curve was correct at the bottom and was exactly 512 cubic or square inches. And the next year we came out on the field and we ran a Napoleonic column of shields bristling with RBGs, with reloaders in the center. And we devastated everything in our path. And we did that for several years. We were absolutely devastating as an RBG squad. Our sword skills were fine, but as an RBG squad, we were absolutely amazing. To the point that, and we were running as mercenaries, to the point that we didn't just break scenarios, we broke war in our locality. Like, war was broken because of our RBG use. And then I stopped being such a fringe player, and I actually ended up becoming like the Master of Blades for my barony, and I ended up having to be in charge of the war and stuff like that. And as some of you know, I'm a professional game designer, and I was like, well, this is broken, so we need to fix it. And so that's where we came up with the convention of evening up the RBG ammo on the sides. So after 5 years of basically hosing the royalist forces, I became a royalist and fixed the problem that we created. And that's my story.
All right, Gio, you're last but not least.
For me, it's not necessarily so much of a scenario that I broke or wasn't, well, kind of. The biggest thing I want to point on is make sure your marshals know what they're doing. Changing rules in the middle of a scenario was never a good idea. Giving bad information during a scenario is never a good idea. What happened with me was it was at the end of a very long fighting day. We're on an open field battle, and it's like 100+ degrees that we're fighting in. It's just an open field battle where I have to get literally a tote from one end of the field back to my end. It was capture the flag, but with like a 20-30 pound tote that you had to drag or move. In most kingdoms, or the way that they are interpreted, is the 180 is based off of your shoulders, not necessarily your line of vision. However, there was bad information given that it's based off of your vision of where your 180 is. DFBs weren't allowed, so this was an important factor. Whenever that comes into play, I typically wait until I am either step in front of them, and then I'll lay my sword across their neck and slit their throat. And so what was happening is there was somebody who was dragging a tote across the field. I placed my sword on their neck and drew, but because they were looking over their left shoulder and I was on their right side, technically I wasn't in their 180. And that got me really, really upset. And I had to remove myself from the field because I was no longer in control of my emotions and was not safe to be on said field. And I about punched the living daylights out of this person. Fun story, a year later, he's now my provost.
Virgil.
Yes, this was Virgil. I mean, technically, he gamed the rules off of what the marshal had told him. The 180 is from your vision, not your shoulder. So, yeah. Long story short, make sure your marshals actually know what the hell they're talking about. And number two, you know what? Apparently, when you want to punch a person, they make a really good provost later. So, there's that.
May I offer a number 3?
Yeah.
The spirit of the rule, not the letter.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that is literally the one time I have had to remove myself from the field because I was about to go ape shit on this person.
Yeah, no, I wasn't admonishing you. I was admonishing Virgil.
No. Well, like I said, I just wanted to point out that, like, literally,
That's fair.
I was about to cause actual physical harm against this person if I didn't remove myself from the field. So
I had
keep in check with your emotions.
I had something similar happen. So we do a thing on tier where we'll do a death from behind, where if the person doesn't know you're there, you can death from behind them. There's no, oh, you weren't behind my 180. If the person is looking over there and I put my sword in front of your face and say death from behind, the person says, thank you for not taking my kidney.
I've got another Australia story for that, but yeah.
I'm just trying to, Wistric really wants us to like.
No. So like all of the like DFBs that aren't DFBs and oh my God, how do we do, like, I have stories when I'm no longer being recorded.
I think there's a lot of people who have stories when we're no longer being recorded on DFBs or not DFBs.
All right, are you ready for your plugging now?
Nice.
Is that where we're at?
I believe we're ready for our plugs.
All
Wait,
right.
wait,
Our plugs.
what's our time?
Oh my God.
Way longer than it should have been.
What does that mean?
That's
Are we
when
ready
we
for our
started
plug?
recording.
Wistric! No! No!
But anyway, Bruce, do you want to do the plugs or do I?
You are better at the plugs, but I really do think, like so many of the scenarios and horror stories we've heard from these no shit there I was stories, that we need to discuss the very convoluted episode happening next month, because people need to be prepared for what's about to happen. So, Wistric, take it away.
Are we, wait, we have 2 episodes next month, and I'm not sure which one you're now talking about because this is kind of scary.
Oh,
So the first one
oh.
is a slight change from our usual format in that it's going to be Bruce and me just talking with each other about the oft-mentioned, many legendary across all the lands, mid-realm army binders, and all the logistical organization that our own beloved XO of the mid-realm army brings. Your virtual background is messing that up.
Oh, well,
They're
But
like
also-
magic finders.
Or like how organized, how legendarily organized, and sometimes obnoxiously organized the mid-realm army is. We're going to do an episode of basically how the mid-realm got to be this way, and Bruce is going to walk us through these binders.
Cool.
How thick is that?
After that, which is going to be our last one for the year, it's going to be December 16th. It's going to be, right before or kind of during already holiday season. We're going to do Rapier Bardic. We're going to talk about, or we're going to have bards, Master Mateo, pretty much anybody else we can drag in, singing rapier specific songs. Because like if you ever heard Callantir march by, there's a bunch of heavy songs, but it turns out there are some rapier songs out there, and there should be more rapier songs. We should know them because we are an army as well. So December 16th, Rapier Bardic, also called Battle Songs for Fencers. And I'm going to have my cocoa and my marshmallows and my onesie for that one because it's the holidays.
Yep.
And then pay attention to the Facebook page, Fighting the World. We've got our schedule for the next few months planned out. We'll post it up there. Keep an eye out for announcements. And otherwise, thank you.
Yeah. So we want to advertise the Bardic nice and early because we want you guys to participate as well. So please don't think that this is just for Master Mateo or Master Lot, etc. This is for everyone. If you have a piece you want to come present, Wistric's making me sing with him. So I don't know how I feel.
Oh crap, am I having to sing?
You don't have, you're gonna have to sing. You freaking wrote this song.
No. When you write a song, you don't have to sing it because I can't sing. For the good of kingdom and crown, I do not sing in public. I write songs, but I don't sing.
And society.
Pretty sure I wrote this song for you to sing, but I'll have to go back and check my notes.
It's a duet, bitch.
Oh shit, it is, isn't it?
Why?
Oh.
Okay, why is every episode me cussing out Wistric at the very end? All right. We want to say,
Appropriate.
It was very good branding.
I wanted to say thank you to everyone for showing up and giving us your scenarios to rip apart. I hope that some of our feedback was helpful. And if it wasn't, maybe it was brain food for someone else planning their next scenario. Thank you to all our panelists. I'm sorry for the wonderful Facebook chat in which we planned all this and the homework, but we really appreciate you guys all being here and hope we'll see you again soon.
Thank you for having us. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you so much for joining us. You've been wonderful.
I need those cards, Oliver. I need those cards.
Oh. So I'm gonna go get some meat on a sword before LA closes down. Who's with
So
me?
cheesy.
Oh, right. It's still. Yeah, you let us know how that is.
Yeah,
I
it's
can't
better meat on
actually.
the
LA
sword.
closed back down tonight. We are back to shutdown. We have no.
Already? Because it's only like 6 your time, isn't it?
Yeah,
Eight
no,
to
tonight's when it starts
COVID.
for
It's
another
quarter
3
to-
weeks.
Quarter to
For
9.
another 3 weeks, we're quarantined again. So.
All right. Wistric, make the recording stop.
Yes, ma'am.
I can
Good
only
night,
make
everybody.
the
Thank you
fuck
for joining
word.
us.
What am I going